past. And if I was, I certainly wouldn't tell you.
Oh, Griffin. Scary. Now you don't have a Zodiac build, so you're clear.
I don't. I'm a bit of an anti-Zodiac.
Yeah, exactly. You don't.
Yeah.
You're not kind of lumbering. You're not.
No.
You're not a lumberer.
It's one relief I feel watching this movie.
that you could never be accused.
They
of
would never call me
Zodiac
in for
crimes.
questioning.
Born after they committed.
Correct.
Were committed.
Yes.
And don't
Which, by the
really
way,
lumber.
Yeah, born after they're committed doesn't seem to exonerate you as much as it did in the past.
That's true.
I feel like
That's
nowadays, all sorts of people get accused of being the Zodiac killer.
Yeah. It's
the
spooky
build.
when he says that.
The build.
Those knives.
Scared of guns and
those knives, Griffin, that I have in my chair back there,
Yes.
they're covered in blood. They're for killing a chicken. So
We should mention, we're not recording this in our office. Today we're recording in David's trailer.
There's full of squirrels.
Filled with squirrels.
Yeah.
well, there's
Squirrels and knives.
but I have two kinds of squirrels. I got my freezer squirrels and I got my living squirrels.
Right. Your friend squirrels and your food squirrels.
Is the implication that eventually the trailer squirrels are going to go in the freezer?
I think he's growing squirrels as a source of food.
Yeah, it seemed
Right.
like that.
Right. So like after a while, some of them end up in the freezer.
Oh yeah.
When they're
you know,
ready.
You know, I used to have rats in my freezer, right?
What?
For what?
My roommate had a pet snake,
Learned.
Ooh.
Learned Foot, and my roommate's name was Learned Foot. Shout out Learned. Hope you're doing well. I think he just got a new job. And he fed the snake rats, and you had to freeze them and then thaw them out and then give them to the snake.
So your roommate named Learned
Mhm.
had a pet snake.
And does he have a lumbering build?
And is he the Zodiac killer?
No, he was tall but not stocky.
Okay.
But I would just have these moments where I would open the freezer,
Mhm.
be like, wait, what? Like once a month, I would be like, wait, I need what is this again? Rat. It's the rat. Frozen rat.
We
And
mentioned
then they have that with the squirrels. Ugh. Yeah.
Learned, your former roommate, came up on a recent episode, and I got a text from a friend that I thought was completely inscrutable. I could not make sense of what was being written to me. And then I realized it was because I read it as learned foot.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I thought someone was starting a sentence with,
Right,
I
yeah.
learned that foot. And I was like, whose
But
foot?
his name is Learned. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I sent this text? Or
No,
someone
Orlando
else?
Ollier,
Yeah.
who was 1 degree away from Learned Foot and had made some connection after you mentioned him on the show.
Yeah.
This is the great way to end. Start.
Okay, let's move
And
on.
it was
Episode's
so good
over.
to be here. Thank you so much for
Great
having
way
me.
to open and close our episode on one of the best movies we've ever covered.
Yeah, definitely.
It's immediately in that tier of conversation.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's, I think so.
I'm legitimately honored to be here
We
because
Look,
it is a masterpiece.
it was a lightning bolt from the blue.
Yeah.
We were there was some struggle in guest booking on this episode. We had a thing set. We arranged the schedule.
Yeah, we
Things
had one
changed.
notion that got thrown into chaos, right? Yeah.
We had to slot something in quickly.
Yeah.
And I was sort of asking around friends of the show, and no one could come up with anything.
Yeah.
And then Alex Ross Perry, a mutual friend, was like, well, obviously.
Yeah. Leslye Headland.
Right.
We were like, well, but why would she ever want to waste her time traveling to
Find out.
fucking downtown
Listen to the
Brooklyn?
fucking prequel episode.
No, I mean, it is Zodiac is I have a top 4
Okay,
that,
sure.
you know,
4 faves.
4 faves. And I don't like to rank them
Okay.
because they're all so different,
Yeah.
but it's
You have a
It's
Mount Rushmore.
yeah, it's a Mount Rushmore.
Thanks.
It's Zodiac, The Shining, Back to the Future, The Apartment. You know, like that's
Wow.
that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've covered, this is now the third of your Mount Rushmore we've covered.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
We
Yeah.
rudely didn't book you on the first two,
So rude.
but Alex took one of them.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's on him.
Yeah.
That's his fault.
Yeah.
And then I think Timothy Simmons did The Shining. Is
He
that
did.
right?
Simon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
You do Wilder.
Or I'm sorry. No, right. You said Shining, Back to the Future. Okay. So
Yeah.
Alex didn't take one.
Yeah,
Yes.
Alex did
Clockwork.
Orange.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, Wilder's, I don't know, you would double up some of them. You could do him. Wilder.
Yeah.
Like 20 movies.
Buddy,
maybe.
one of the most famously great endings to a career. The movie that makes Tarantino want to retire. I just love that every interview, they're like, why are you going to retire? He's like, don't want to make Buddy.
Really? He says that?
Always.
I've never seen
I
Buddy
haven't heard that
Buddy.
either.
I'm
The
telling
last
you,
Wilder
he-
I've seen
Google it.
is Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, which is not bad.
No, and which Tarantino did a video
likes.
archives
Yeah, he
episode
did.
on and was like, this is the one he should have ended on.
Oh,
Right,
got
right.
it.
But it's
got
his
it.
theory of like everyone stays at the dance a little too long.
A little too long.
Yeah. I'm telling you, if you Google it so many times over the years, Buddy Buddy is the one.
Introduce our show.
This is Blank Check with Griffin and David, a searing, obsessive, investigative podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So this 1 week will turn into something of a true crime podcast, right?
Yeah, right. So we'll finally hit the charts.
And I have my my animal crackers laid out in front of me. It's a podcast. What? Sound crunch? Ben brought animal crackers.
Did you
Okay.
really?
Well,
Oh,
I didn't even know what I was setting up.
Yep. Ben and I exchanged a knowing glance.
Okay.
And out they came.
Reclosable snack sack of Barnum's animal
I couldn't
crackers.
get the damn box.
No, of course.
Why couldn't you?
why couldn't you?
I don't know. It was the best I could find.
Yeah.
fair.
And the reclosable snack sack is so much better for audio.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That won't make any noise at all. Yes. This is Blank Check with Griffin and David.
It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes their checks clear. Those. I
yeah,
fucked
you
up.
messed up. Keep going. Keep
I was
going.
one word off.
You're fine. You're fine.
Getting over a chest cold, Leslye. It's fucked with my head. This goes into the canon of movie Griffin's been waiting to talk about since they started the show, and he's sick on the day of the record.
Yeah.
Aw.
Sunshine,
You're fine.
Fury
Yeah,
Road,
Sure.
Spider-Man 2,
Sure.
Yeah.
Zodiac,
Yeah.
Starship Troopers, the episode where I vomited mid-episode.
Yeah, but you didn't know you were sick at the start of that episode, right? That kind of came
but I
on
became
you.
pretty sick.
You did. Yeah.
During.
He does
Everyone
throw up
found out
during
about
that
it.
episode, Leslye.
Given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want, and sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce. Baby. This is a mini series on the films of David Fincher.
Mm.
It's called The Curious Pod of Benjamin Buttcast.
Right? Right?
And this is, look, I feel like usually we have an answer, but across this miniseries, we keep going back and forth on what is the blank check in Fincher's career.
You think it's this?
It's tough to define
Sure. Like where he had the most unfettered. You think it's this?
in a certain way, and we'll get
I think
into it.
Button.
But there's something about this and Button being tied as productions.
Yeah.
Are they
And-
tied as productions?
Yeah.
Well, they're very close together in time, and yeah.
And
they-
Warner's and
Oh.
Paramount team up for both
Oh,
Right.
and
got it.
co-sign to co-finance both.
Okay.
I think each one taking a
Yeah,
different stake.
Paramount
and-
had this in America, and WB had
But it
Button
was
in America.
almost like
Yeah.
Button was the guarantor for this, which is wild when you watch Button and you go, it's insane they gave him this much money to make this.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely
But they were like,
insane.
if you make safe play Button for us,
yeah,
we'll let you make your weird
your
newspaper.
weird
Do you
newspaper
like
movie.
Button?
I saw Button in the theater and have not seen it since.
You're like most Americans.
Don't remember it.
Time to rebutton, Leslye.
I saw it with my friend Fenry, who I also saw some
This
of
movie with
this movie-
right.
some
we'll
of this
talk
movie
about
with.
it, right?
and he sobbed uncontrollably at the end of it, and
Yeah.
I felt dead inside. So that's never watched it again.
You might feel different now that you have a kid. I'll say that.
Okay.
Speaking as someone who now recently rewatched it with a kid and much more affected by it.
I hear this.
Yes.
I've heard that that's the case.
Today we're talking about Zodiac. I think all three of us agree David Fincher's masterpiece, right? Not to like spoil anything, but it's just like undeniable.
No,
to me.
absolutely, and it's not this. I'm gonna just really go hard. Not The Social Network. Just not.
Well, so you're
Just
saying
not.
you don't even like The Social Network?
No, I like it. It's
But it's
fine.
not in the same
It is
conversation.
not even in the same conversation as far as
I
I'm
agree with
concerned.
that.
Yeah. I think it came at a particular time that everybody got on board with.
Sure.
And so they got on board with a long talky movie about, The Social Network.
It's a
Whereas
Facebook.com.
Zodiac, I think, suffered a little bit just in timing. I think if Zodiac came post us discovering, the identity of the Golden
Not
State
the Golden
Kid.
State Killer.
Like,
Yes.
Zodiac comes out then,
Yes.
boom, everybody agrees it's the masterpiece.
This movie was ahead of the culture, for
Yeah.
better or worse.
It's,
in a way
it's
that
it's a tone setter for
Social
yes.
Network was
yeah.
as well, but it was more tapped into the movie moment.
Yes, I agree. Yes, it's good. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's not.
You
I
can
just
say it's not.
I
was
just think
wondering.
some people list it as his masterpiece, and I couldn't agree less.
I love Social Network, and I think it is a masterpiece, but I think Zodiac is the elite tier of American film history.
You know what I think it might be? I think it might be that when I think of a filmmaker's masterpiece, there has to be that little bit of personal.
Yes.
There has to be that tiny little drop of baby David Fincher in it.
Yes.
And that is Zodiac. How he grew up, what Zodiac meant to him when he was younger, his dad was a newspaperman? Time
we'll
Life?
talk about it.
Yes.
Yes,
We'll
he was
talk
a
about it anyway,
newspaperman.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Our guest today is Leslye Headland, the great
we,
Leslye.
We have to introduce.
We haven't introduced
you.
properly, even though you introduced yourself very well. Director of, and I need to say this because I'm not blowing smoke up your ass.
Yeah.
But there's a track record. There's a paper trail. I've said this on mic many times
Yep.
over the course of this
I
podcast.
know what you're about to say.
In my opinion, inarguably, always my go-to answer, the best romantic comedy of the last 10 years.
Thank you.
When we like bemoan the death of the romantic comedy and it comes up in discussion and people go, how do you bring it back? And what was the last good one? I'm like, it's Sleeping with Other People.
Thank
That's
you.
the model.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Thank you.
It's the one that nails it for me.
It was I really appreciate that. It was extremely personal movie. It was a movie that I poured my entire heart and soul into, and it was a genre that I really care about.
Which
Right.
you can tell.
And I agree. It's really gone the way of streaming, I guess now. Like there
Yeah.
really isn't a market
Back.
for it.
Bring it back.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
Great movie.
Thank you.
It is. I don't. He already hyped
But
it up.
you're an incredible filmmaker, an
Thank you
incredible
so much.
writer, an incredible playwright.
Yeah.
Uh,
I saw Bachelorette, Leslie. I didn't tell you.
Oh, the
this
play?
yet.
you saw it on stage.
I saw it on stage at
Oh.
the second stage Uptown.
Yes,
remember?
that's right. Yeah, in
Yeah.
2010.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was not dragged to it. That's going to sound harsh.
That does sound hard.
Most people are dragged to theater, though, I think. Yeah.
Well, my brother works in theater, and he was, I think, an intern at the second stage then or something.
Interesting. Okay.
And he was like, "Come see this one. Like, you'll like it. Like, it's you like trust me. It's fun. It's I'm not dragging you to some like Eat Your Broccolis play or whatever."
Yes,
and it was
yeah.
so fucking good.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I
I love that play. Also a very personal play. Like also, something I felt incredibly blessed to have been featured at the second stage Uptown. Like that was just such a, because I don't know if they still do that series.
It's gone as far as I know.
It really broke me as a writer, like like that was the,
That was the moment.
That was
right.
the moment,
was
like that and Terriers were like my first two things that I did.
Well, Terriers was great.
Yeah.
But it was Fran Kranz, right?
Yes. Fran Kranz.
Eddie K. Thomas. Catherine Waterston. Right.
Tracy Chimo, Celia
Yes.
Keenan Bolger.
Celia Keenan Bolger. Right.
And my friend Carmen Hurley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things where like there's the blowjob monologue like really early.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the whole audience clearly just has this whole moment of like, okay, now, I guess now we know what we're in for.
I would say that I always want to have some moment where you just let the audience know, like, if you don't like this, you're not going to like the rest of it.
It's a statement of intent.
You might as well
Yeah.
just leave right now.
Yes.
And because it's going to be this for 90 minutes.
It's exactly what it felt like in the room. Like, 'cause it was a small theater and you could just tell everyone being like, oh, she's still talking about it. Okay. Oh, she's not done yet. Okay. All right. That's going to be what this is like. And then it's so good. Anyway.
Oh, thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
But to tie in like deep blank check lore that our lunatic Zodiac killer adjacent fans feed on, to build out the tapestry, you were on the same trivia team with Alex Ross Perry.
Sometimes.
That's correct. Sometimes
You were a guest. at
I was a
least.
guest sometimes on Love Ventura Pet Detective.
Right.
That's
a great
right.
name.
Great name.
But
yeah.
the Videology Trivia League, which looms large in the history of the show, is the formation or the real cementing of our friendship,
Yes.
David and I.
Yes.
This podcast brings out of. And there are people in the history of this show who we became friends with
Yes.
then and there at the trivia. And then there are people like Alex who we didn't even really connect with until years later, and Nia DaCosta. But I just find it so funny the more it's like, I think about Conan O'Brien talks about careers are like war movies where at the beginning you meet like the 15 guys in your squadron and then the movie goes on 3 hours and you keep on running into the same guys
exactly
in the
right,
battlefield
yeah.
over like decades.
Yeah.
And it feels like that bar is like our training grounds.
What was it called again? Videology?
Videology.
Yeah. Sad that it's, R.I.P.
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 Murdered by the Zodiac killer?
He's back.
Yeah.
So yeah, Zodiac. I do think I agree. Not to spoil, this is Fincher's best film.
Yeah.
And it's the best film of a year that's sort of notoriously a good year for movies. The 2007 There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men and Michael Clayton and a lot of big, well-remembered movies.
Yeah. A year that is so
yeah.
good that it's hard to make a top 10 with an unconventional pick.
Right.
You know,
Right, you're like, well,
yeah.
I have to include X
right.
and Y.
And
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
there's like a pool of 30 agreed upon fantastic movies from that year. And if you're taking anything outside of the 30 year, like, are you just trying to color outside the lines?
Yeah. Are you just trying to be contrarian?
Yeah. But in
Yeah.
a year with like several incredibly valid,
Yeah.
kind of undeniable masterpieces, I do think over time, this one has only kind of grown.
Oh, absolutely. Because I feel like I remember it coming out and there was sort of a resounding, not with film nerds, but I think with general audiences, there was a resounding sort of yawn at this movie. You know, that it was kind of long and, you know, there's no resolution and it's which is sort of the point of the whole thing. But it didn't feel like it hit in any way.
No, and it gets 0 Oscar nominations. I mean, I feel like a meme at the time was like Norbit 1 Oscar nom, Zodiac 0.
That's right. Yeah.
Sure, right.
Because Norbit got the makeup one, and that was always the comparison point that they were making. But I was looking, like, there is only one critics group that gave this movie an award.
Yeah.
The Dublin Society of Film Critics.
Well, top of the morning to
I'm
them.
giving them credit.
Why do you think that's the case?
Because it was released in March, and then...
Oh, that's right. It was released in March.
And then by the time it was time for awards, No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood had come out.
Yeah.
And there was this kind of like, oh my God.
That
like,
was such a dogfight.
these big totemic movies.
yeah.
Right.
That's
Which
true.
side are you on between those two?
Which one were you?
I was a No Country guy.
Yeah, same.
So was I. These days, I kind of don't care. I like them all. I'm happy they're with us.
Rewatched either in full in so long, and I rewatched scenes from both all the time.
Yeah.
But I think, like, it gets lost in a shuffle of a year where it's like you have movies like that are connecting in a slightly larger way. And then you have things that are like full-on hits that are critically well regarded, like Ratatouille, you know?
Oh, right.
Sure.
And then you have things like...
Wait, do you think that it's weird that they're kind of similar to Zodiac, though?
No.
The There Will Be Blood, No Country?
There's something in the air that year.
Yeah.
Weirdly, you know? And it's like...
Lots of laughs.
Lots of laughs. But
It
even
is
like
very
Jesse
Like these
James,
nihilistic endings where
Yes.
you're
Yes.
like, you know, there's no hope.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's also kind of the peak of this. Like, I mean, Zodiac is not an indie movie.
No.
It's a studio film. But like all the studios having their indie imprints, putting out challenging-ish movies.
Yeah.
Something like Juno can take off and make $1 zillion, or I don't know what else was sort of like big that year. You know, like if you look at the Oscars, it's like a dark year. Like,
Yes.
because like Michael Clayton is also, that has a triumphant ending in a way. Like it's dark.
movie.
Like he beats them, I guess, but then
Yeah.
he, get in the car, he
Has
starts driving.
Nothing to do with himself anymore.
The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, Sweeney Todd, like Eastern Promises.
Yeah.
These are like very bleak adult,
Yes.
films that
Yes.
had broken through. Jesse James.
Well, I was going to say, Jesse James, I think weirdly comes out much later
Yeah.
and takes the Zodiac spot of the one that critics are fighting.
To
Or-
nudge in.
right.
Sure, yeah.
Do we have any idea why the studio released it in March?
Yes.
We do, which essentially is they thought it would not do very well.
Well, the
in
other part
fall,
of this
yes.
was...
Did it have a
supposed-
festival life?
It was...
They released it at Cannes after
2 months
it
after
came
it
out.
bombed in theaters.
Because I was going to say, I was
Yeah.
like, wasn't it at Cannes?
They put it at Cannes 2 months, as Griffin is
Yeah.
saying, after it had bombed, to Fincher's
Wild.
confusion.
And
like
lost
Fincher
the
was
Palme
like,
d'Or to
I'm-
No Country, right?
yeah, but it also,
Yeah.
it not only did it lose it, no country.
not
wasn't
No
at Cannes.
Country.
No. What? But
No Country was at Cannes.
well, but that would be the year.
2007.
Wait, well, now I have to look it up.
Maybe it didn't win, but it was at Cannes.
I'm looking it up.
Okay.
Jesus, God.
I'm forgetting what the Palme d'Or would have been in 2007.
Palme d'Or in 2007 went to 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days.
right.
It's a very good film.
Oh, yes.
The jury president was Stephen Frears that year. Yeah, No Country, I think, did win director maybe or something.
That sounds right.
No Country. Let's see. Nope, didn't win nothing.
Well, no awards for No Country.
Yeah, no awards for No Country. C'est pays, c'est pas pour le vieil homme, as
The
I
other
always say.
thing
The
was-
French title, literally, This Country is Not for the Old Man, which I just would see on posters and laugh.
French title
Like, that is
translations
good.
are
That
always
is fantastic.
so good.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be Paramount's big winter fall 2006 Oscar contender. And they were fighting him over length. And then they kind of just threw up their hands and went, we're just fucking releasing it in March.
Right.
Wow.
So by March, like it went from being a hot prospect to them to sort of a shrug and a
Yeah.
surrender. But I do think weirdly, 2006 was kind of a weak Oscar year.
Yeah, it could have won. That's The Departed.
absolutely
year.
Even if Paramount kind of dumped it, but they dumped it November, December, I think it would have at least had like an insider type Oscar run where it's like,
to be
the
clear,
studio abandoned this, it bombed, but critics love this.
I
and it's
love
gonna
The
get it.
Departed, but it's kind of weird that it won Best Picture.
Yeah,
That's not the kind of movie that often wins Best Picture.
Yeah.
Movies where Jack Nicholson picks up someone's hand in a bag and goes,
Right.
like that's not usually what they love.
It would have been the movie of 2007. Or 2006, I mean, rather. Sorry.
It seems like a giant fuck you.
I think it was a bit of a fuck you, but I also think at the time, as much as we lionize this movie now, David Fincher movies always come out and everyone's always like, too cold. Every
Right.
single time. It
Yeah.
happens to this day. It happened to Mank. It's happening to The Killer.
Yeah.
And then 5 years later, everyone's like, we all agree he changed cinema on that day. And like, I'm just like, you didn't fucking agree about anything. And I remember when Zodiac came out, how old would I have been? I was like 21. But I was like, at the time, I was like, it's pretty weird. This is just kind of getting dropped with like the March garbage, just kind of like, all right. And I went to see it and I was like, that thing was incredible.
Was this post Zack Snyder taking over March?
It's
300
the same March.
It's the same March?
It's
Okay.
the same March. I want to say 300 comes out.
300 is, wait.
2007.
Yes.
Okay,
so
so
it's
that's
like in the shadow of it. No, it's a week later.
Oh. So they
300's on the horizon.
They kick him into the pit.
Yeah,
they just
do.
kicked him into the pit.
No, but you're right. This is like a week after this movie comes out, March becomes a legitimate time to release a movie. And the week before that, it was a garbage month.
A garbage month, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's changed immediately after.
We will talk about the box office this week.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do on this podcast, obviously. But Zodiac ran into a buzzsaw. That was the other problem that nobody saw coming. Do you know what it is?
I think I know what it is.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about it.
I thought you were going to say we will talk about 300. And I said,
I'd rather not.
I don't think we will.
I'm not sure that's a good idea.
I don't know. Maybe this is the moment. Bring it back.
Yeah.
Start poking the Snyder Bear.
So yeah, let me give you a little bit of context about Zodiac, Leslye. But then, yes, I do want to ask about you seeing the movie because we were talking about this briefly.
I want to say one thing before we
Go ahead.
crack this open, just to Leslie's point, because I think this is a thing to pin on the cork board as we start putting a bunch of thread around building our Zodiac map at this episode. I think that's a reason why Social Network is so lionized.
Yes.
It is the only movie of his where everyone was unified at the moment it came out.
That's right.
It is the only movie in his career where when it came out, it was a hit, audiences liked it, and critics liked it, and it was an Oscar player. And every other time he's been missing one of them, and that everyone comes around later.
Yes.
My argument for that would be people appreciated the coldness because they were like,
because it was about a cold
we
person.
need to take this guy down.
And
to some
also,
degree.
that's 100% correct. Yes. And also, it was sort of like, oh, the Sorkin script did good in the fridge.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? Like, oh,
Yeah.
that actually benefits from control.
He was cooling something that was a little too hot.
Yeah. And so that worked really well for everyone. I don't think there's another. I mean, Fight Club is sort of its own thing where obviously that went over poorly in a lot of ways. But like, I don't think people were like too cold. They were just like, I don't know what to do with this. But mostly it's like, yeah, if only like the meticulous little techno freak David Fincher had some blood in his veins. Like, it's always the initial reaction. And they're always wrong, to be clear.
Oh,
like,
I think so too.
yeah, but like that's the fucking endless read on him.
I mean, I think the flip of that, and we'll get to this in its own episode, but Gone Girl, I think people are like, well, this is just kind of popcorn.
Yeah, but
People were like, this is fun, but
Gone
it's not
Girl everyone
serious.
liked, but they were like, but we can't take this seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Come on.
yeah.
Come on.
Do you like Gone Girl?
I love Gone Girl.
Gone Girl's the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. I have the cool girl monologue framed in my office.
Is it true? Alex was trying to get this right. Do you have two separate David Fincher related tattoos?
I have Marla Singer
There she is.
with slide underneath
Oh, that's
her.
so cool.
I am Jack's complete lack of surprise.
Hey.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I felt like you guys were a little harsh on Fight Club. May I say?
So you've listened to the episode.
No, I did listen to the episode, and not that it
It's
was
not my movie.
Same thing.
I'll admit.
Yeah.
I have to
And
admit.
I apologize if it felt like I was being too dismissive of it.
Oh,
It's
no, I
just-
totally got what you guys were saying because with the easy writerness of it, like
Mhm.
meaning that it's sort of like younger people now watching that film would be like us watching Easy Rider. Is that sort of what Am I
100%.
remembering that correctly?
Yeah. I know exactly.
And I did ask my younger for my Star Wars. I actually did ask some younger cast members to watch Fight Club, and I think that they did have that reaction.
Yeah.
But to me, Fight Club is Dr. Strangelove. Like it's
Sure.
a satire that stands up because what it's satirizing is evergreen, which
Right,
is
it's still a
male
thing.
toxicity. You know, like it's always going to be there. It's always going to be happening. It's like
it's a good take.
Do you know what I mean? That's my take.
Yeah,
but
no,
I
that's a good one.
also understood that because I was texting with Alex about it, fighting with him about it, and he was like, "You have to understand, it was my whole life."
Yes.
You know, and I think that was the thing that he was sort of reacting against.
This is the one thing I want to say in our defense in this episode, okay? Defense of that episode, because this is the one Fincher episode we're not recording wildly far in advance, so we can actually respond to that.
Oh, sure. Right. Good
I don't
point.
feel the need to respond to all the criticism because I understand the note. And I'm not placing any blame on him, but I think you need to understand where David and I were coming from, if I can speak for David. Alex says, I want to do Fight Club. That was my whole personality for like 15 years. And I think David and I both think, great, we can sit back.
Right,
He's going to come in and deliver the dissertation on a movie that was not either of our movie.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And so I was just like, I maybe am a little cooler on this than a lot of people. I have no aspiration to like note it or like create my thesis for why it's overrated or anything.
Yeah.
But I thought he was just going to lay it all out and I'd be like, interesting case.
Right.
Which is what he'd done for the last couple of movies he came on for, where it was like, this is my whole personality. And what we could not have anticipated is he rewatched it and went like, I don't know if I like this anymore.
Right.
He was like, oh,
yeah.
maybe it is kind of in the past for me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it is. And I don't think I've seen Fight Club as much as I've seen Zodiac. So I saw Zodiac when it came out. I saw, I had some mishaps trying to see it in the theater because I was an assistant at the time. And like, I slept through one of them. And, you know, like it was a really bad year for me. And just personally, it was a really horrible year. So but I had to see Zodiac because I was a massive Fincher fan. And so I went to go see a matinee of it at that AMC. I think it's like an AMC on Broadway and 18th.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that one.
Yeah. The AMC on 19th.
You know, and, you know, just sat through it. And the second like hurdy-gurdy man came on at the end, I was like, this is a masterpiece. I have witnessed a masterpiece. And then I walked out into like the brightest sunlight. You know what I mean? Like of just like, it was so trippy. And I think that after that, Zodiac, once it came out on DVD and I got the director's cut and the commentaries, which I'm sure we'll talk about, I watched it almost every day. So I saw it in New York when I was an assistant. I quit my job, which was very difficult and hard to do. I moved to Los Angeles with nothing. And I slept on a couch because I had no money. And I shared this studio apartment with this other girl, this roommate. And I watched Zodiac every day. And at one point, she had an intervention with me and was like, you have to stop watching Zodiac.
I mean, as much as I adore Zodiac, I might worry. Yes.
She was extremely worried about me.
Yeah.
She was like, I think that you have some mental issues you should work out.
I mean, this is like when I was like heartbroken when I was 15 and I watched The Wiz every day for 4 straight months.
It's really, it
where
got
it's like,
me,
you can like this movie, but something else is going on.
something else is going on.
Right.
It did get me through, and I think because it's about obsession and it's about a certain type of addiction, like it got me through a period of my life that I don't know if I would have gotten through if I didn't have Zodiac. Like, so it's it's not just like a cold movie that's investigative, that has a nihilistic ending. Like, to me, it's so rich and beautiful and gorgeous, and there's all these like nooks and crannies in it that you can just live in. It's like Barry Lyndon for me. Like, you know, you can live inside the movie, you know, like even
Leslye,
more so. Yeah.
I've seen this movie many times, not as many as you.
I've seen it more times than you, somehow.
I find it to weirdly be a comfort food movie, even though I find it very upsetting and disturbing.
Absolutely. My wife will say to me, like when I'm very stressed out, my wife will say, do you want to go home and watch Zodiac? Yeah. You know, like, do you want to go watch Zodiac? I'm like, yes, I do.
It relax me, but it focuses me.
Yes.
And it sort of grounds me.
Yeah.
I find it kind of relaxing and comforting and very funny. And yes, of course, it contains depictions of murder.
Yes.
That are chilling and realistic.
And also just like the darkness of the human soul and like
that
obsession.
That's the comforting part.
The unanswerability of
that actually is my whole thing with Zodiac. And that's one of the only scary movies that Forky has watched with me multiple times, my wife.
Has our Zodiac with you multiple times?
Oh, really?
Now I understand why your marriage works.
And she watched it with me
For the
other
first
night.
time.
It's like after the cabbie, you're basically done with murder.
Yes, that's right.
And because Fincher wisely is like, I'm not depicting anything else where it's like, who knows, maybe this was a, it's like, no. We are depicting
hard facts.
Confirmed Zodiac killings only.
Yeah.
And then it's like now.
Where people survived.
And
because they don't show the first one.
Right. They don't show the first
one. If we can't interview a survivor, we're not going to depict it on screen.
Right. Well, the cabbie didn't survive, but the cabbie was, witnessed and so on. Yeah. But yes, correct. And then you're like, yeah, now we're just going to sink into obsession. And yes, there'll be scary stuff. And then, but like we're going to be in diners, explaining things, looking through books.
There's going to be harsh sunlight
comforting.
coming through like police stations. There's going to be, people going to the library.
Well, I love that it's these different kinds of investigations. It's detectives, it's newspaper, and it's cold case.
Puzzle boy. I call him Puzzle Boy.
Puzzle Boy.
Yes.
He is a puzzle boy.
But yes. He is what we have now. Yes. That's what he is as well.
David.
Yeah.
I'm notoriously great at falling asleep.
Good job.
The best at it.
Yep. No problems there.
Do it at reasonable hours. I stay asleep. I wake up at good hours. I need no help.
You're describing good sleep.
Right. I'm the best at it, if I can say.
Yeah.
I am the best at sleeping.
Great. Okay. So are we done?
Well.
What's up?
You got a little baby.
I do.
You have a daughter.
She's a toddler now.
She's a toddler. I've heard some stories about sleep training being difficult.
Well, there's that, but also
changing your hours.
Look. Yes, that's true. You change your own sleep patterns as well as prioritize a small things sleep, which is difficult to deal with. And when babies are born, they really crave white noise, supposedly because when they were in the womb, they were hearing a lot of white noise all the time. It's comforting to them. That's the concept.
Fans,
yeah, right. They're big Michael Keaton fans.
Sure.
Deborah Kara Unger. And so when I had a kid, I got a Hatch, white noise machine for my daughter. That was the first thing I got.
Okay.
I believe it was the Hatch Rest. But now I also have a Hatch Restore, which is like a sort of combo white noise machine and like clock.
Okay.
With a sunlight alarm. You can do the slow, bright.
David, I'm going to blow your mind. You will not believe the coincidence.
What's up?
Our sponsor day happens to be Hatch. I know you organically were just saying this. That you happen to purchase and enjoy several Hatch products that you've used regularly for the last 2 years.
Yep. We never do tangents on the show.
We never do tangents, but in fact, they happen to be the sponsor, and you, my friend, have stumbled into an ad read.
Well, think of the Hatch Restore 2 as your bedside sleep guide, Griffin. Your ally in rest.
Okay.
The innovative all-in-one dream machine is a sophisticated sound machine, light, and alarm clock, beautifully designed for your bedside table.
You said innovative in a very British way.
Innovative. Good rest allows you to be the best version of yourself, which is why the Hatch Restore 2 was engineered to help you form healthy sleep habits for life. So you got the light coming on slowly to sort of train your body to knowing when it's time to rise. You can use it to coach you through meditations or mindfulness exercises if you want. You can listen to white, pink, or brown noise. Wow. And they've got a lot of nature sounds. They got rain, they got waves, they got all that stuff. I love the Hatch machines. I have used them consistently for the last 2.5 years. And right now, Hatch is offering our listeners $20 off your purchase of a Hatch Restore 2 and free shipping at hatch.co/check. Sleep deeply and wake gently with the Restore 2. Go to hatch.co/check to get $20 off and free shipping. That's hatch.co/check.
Leslye, you saying this movie has nooks and crannies that you could live in. I had this thought verbatim rewatching the movie for the episode. I don't think I've ever had this exact thought before. It's not like this is a mental exercise I've run through before, but I thought if I was forced to watch only one movie for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I had to watch that movie every day.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. That sounds torturous, but yes.
Right. But that's part of the exercise.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. I'm like, what's a movie I would still find compelling every day and not get tired of? And there are movies I enjoy watching more than this, but I think this is a movie I would never stop finding interesting. And I would never lack in discovery of new things to sort of dig into and fixate on.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that part of it is that it's not a slave to the 3-act structure. It's interstitial. It's got this sort of episodic feel to it. And not unlike The Shining, it has this sort of labyrinthian feeling to it that no matter how many times you've seen it, you're like, wait, is this the part where he goes to see Donald Logue, or is this the part where, he gets in the fight with Tashi? Like you can't quite remember what scene is coming next.
I will never get to the bottom of it.
But there's no scene where you're like,
it's never going to get repetitive.
Every scene is 3 to 4 guys in a diner or an office chatting, basically.
Having the best conversation
and
you've
you're
ever
like,
heard
every
in your
scene,
life.
you're like, I can't go to the bathroom for this one. Like, I have to watch.
I
have to. Oh, it's
fucking corker.
Logue is back. Yeah.
I absolutely adore this movie too, because I think it does what Fincher actually does best. You know what I mean? Like I think Fincher, up until this point, we've seen like flashiness to those films.
Yeah, sure.
And actually what he is a genius at is blocking actors and staging camera. He's actually just brilliant at doing what the greats all can do. Right. And when it comes down to it, you can either do that or you can't.
Yes.
And there are many directors that absolutely cannot do that, who are lauded, I think, for their inventive sort of way that they put together a mise-en-scene, like the way that they, throw a bunch of jump cuts together. But all the greats, it's blocking and staging. Like, it's so clear the way that he has. I mean, all you have to do is watch like the investigation of Paul Stein's murder, the handheld section.
Is that the cabbie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
With Tashi and Anthony Edwards and Mark Ruffalo. The way that's blocked is like, I could watch that scene, 25 times now and probably find something new that I learned something from that scene.
It's like I don't say this lightly, one of the greatest regrets of my life is I was invited by someone to attend Soderbergh at NYU giving a lecture on Zodiac.
Right. Well, on The Killer, to be clear, not the film. No, I'm joking.
Yes. Yeah. He said, I think I
know who it is. And I'll only tell NYU students.
Yes. But he did a lecture on Zodiac maybe like a year or two after it came out. Pretty fresh. And it was just him, and I don't think this was ever recorded. But it was just him breaking down like scene by scene.
Oh.
You don't understand. This is the guy working at the absolute top of the field right now in just the basic fundamentals of visual storytelling, of everything like meat and potatoes that movie making is. And the term I heard he used all the time was just next level visual math.
Yeah.
In a way that
is exactly it.
Right?
That is exactly it.
And it's so unflashy, but it's like, this is Fincher doing his most sophisticated film, where on a surface level, it is the simplest, it is the sparest,
Right. It's a movie where you're like, wait,
direct.
why did it even cost money? I don't understand. It's mostly set in an office.
And it is so expensive. That's the thing. Like, if you are a filmmaker and you watch Zodiac, you can appreciate how expensive the film is.
Yes.
Like how much digital work has been done in order to create the period, to recreate the waterfront. Like, even the Paul Stein cab moment, like you were saying, not a survivor there, but that's why they use that bird's eye view of the cab, because they're like,
they can't tell you what happened inside.
Right. We don't know what happened inside.
Yes.
We know he got in. We know they took him to Washington and Cherry, and that's all we know. So how do we shoot it?
Like, that's the other filmmaking. I mean, just like his internal rules of like what we are showing you, and when and how, based on like the movie communicating to you the levels of reality of fact versus memory,
all
versus
the way
opinion.
down to like Darlene Ferrin, hitting the turn signal, like when she gets shot, like everything down, like every single detail was like, I love that it starts out by saying that it's based on case files. Yeah. Not by like, this is based on a true story. He says like, this is based on the case files. Like, I don't know why, but that always tickles me too.
I love that it says that though. Yeah. Rather than like inspired by a true story or
true events.
Right. True events. I love when events are true.
I love it.
Zodiac, let me give you some context from the dossier. Obviously, it's coming 5 years after Panic Room, although I suppose you can think of it as sort of being intended as a 2006 movie.
Yes.
Because it is sort of a big gap in his filmography. But, but obviously, what does he work on in between that he never made? Rendezvous with Rama, I think we will talk about again really wanted to make a version of the Arthur C. Clarke novel with Morgan
around
Freeman.
For a long time. This gap is one of the periods where he spends a lot more energy on it, but he even then was sort of like, I can see the way this movie works and the technology's 8 years away for me doing
partly
it.
a sort of digital hang-up thing. He said he wanted to do it like John Krakauer's Into Thin Air. Don't even know what that means, but sounds awesome. Like crazy sort of like the technical details of like space exploration
when you
stuff.
dig into those, because there's one interview that I feel like JJ is pulling from a lot that's from like 07 or 08. That's him saying like, I can almost see us being at the place where I could make it the way I want to.
He wanted to do it like IMAX 4K, and this is in 2008.
I think he wanted to do something similar to Gravity, but even more hard sci-fi, hard science, less pulpy. But it just didn't exist.
He also, as I think we've mentioned, was attached to a script called Seared that became the TV show Kitchen Confidential.
Right.
An adaptation of Anthony Bourdain's book. He was going to make that as a movie with Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
That gets canceled. And then eventually, as we've mentioned, he also later attached to
Chef, which then becomes Burnt, also with Bradley Cooper.
So weird.
But he was going to do it with Keanu. Which is wild.
He was also supposedly attached to that David Benioff movie Stay.
Yes.
Which Mark Foster made. Famous twist movie.
Like one of the
with
hottest
McGregor
scripts.
And Gosling.
Yeah, that people were losing their minds over.
Who's the female lead in that? Naomi Watts. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then everyone hated it.
Hated it.
What's the twist in that movie? Have you seen Stay?
I haven't seen it.
No one's ever seen it. It's not a real film.
I'm like vaguely remembering it.
It was one of those things that everyone was like, just wait, this is going to be huge. And they came out, everyone was like, forget it. We never mentioned this movie.
Happen.
It's not real.
Right.
Don't speak of this film.
But it was like 4 years of the hottest directors and stars all like clamoring to make this thing.
You can't believe the twist in this thing. And they're like, I won't tell you.
People have explained to me what the twist is, and it does not register. I couldn't process
You're like,
it.
and then it turned out he was from, and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. The other big thing, of course, is he works for a while on Mission Impossible 3.
That's the big one.
He's sort of the first choice for it, basically. And, you know.
He announces Cruise has selected
him.
Fun
to think about.
Because he was going to do, there was the World War II movie he was going to do with Pitt.
Sure, we've talked about that. I can't remember which one.
And when Pitt dropped out, it's somewhere there in the dossier. I forget the name of it. When Pitt dropped out, Cruise briefly thought about taking over. It was sort of one of those windows where it's like, we'll keep your development costs going if you can get an equivalent A-lister.
That's what that means. Great title.
So Pitt was attached for a while. Pitt drops out.
This summer, Fertig.
He's trying to keep it afloat. He meets with Cruise. Cruise considers it passes, but then goes, you know what? You passed my test. I want you on MI3.
Cruise considered Fertig, decided to do Last Samurai instead, but then was like, here's a Robert Towne script for MI3.
Yeah. I want to make it really nasty and violent.
We don't know. Fincher is the one who said that we had a cool, really violent idea. He doesn't say what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what he means by that. Like, it was sort of weird to say, like, our idea was violent. I don't like, but who knows?
Here's all I will say.
Obviously, Carnahan is his replacement. Right. And then when Abrams comes on board, I think Abrams is sort of working with new material.
He starts over from square one. Yes. Carnahan, I don't know how much in common the Carnahan version had with the Fincher version.
But Carnahan is someone you turn to for violence.
Correct.
Yes.
This is why I'm saying it did feel like Cruise maybe wanted to go harder and more violent. The thing I know that Carnahan has said in interviews is that his script was largely about drug trafficking in human bodies.
Dear Lord.
Like that they were like putting drugs in dead bodies. And that's one of the reasons everyone kind of panicked around it was like, it was really...
I mean, that sounds crazy.
Just imagine the studio execs. I mean, just
they were using corpses.
Yeah.
And now we're back to like, Ethan Hunt is like, you know, a close-up magician / acrobat, you know, who does fun disguises. Not like they're moving bodies stuffed with drugs or whatever, you know, whatever this is. Yeah.
But just wild that Fincher
His liver's full of microchips.
Fincher sort of talks about it like, I thought they were all kind of jazzed on the idea I had. And then over time, it seemed like they maybe wanted me to take notes from them. And it's wild that he even like
David,
you've gone through Alien 3. I thought you like learned hard and fast. Maybe he thought Cruise could insulate him.
I mean, it makes sense like why Cruise wanted him, but it doesn't make sense why Fincher would want to do it.
Why he would fall for it.
Yeah, why would he fall for it?
I guess there's just sort of an allure of, wow, like Cruise is the #1 movie star in the world. Like this could be cool. But yeah.
Every story I've ever heard about him, which are all very, very...
Finchy or
about Cruise, like which are all very like third person, very far removed, It's just that he can talk anybody into anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
So
right.
I'm assuming he sat down and was like, "Hey, Finch."
And I think he talks to him, but it'll be hard. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You're going to have to work.
Which is the number one
And
thing
you're like,
that Fincher
"Fuck,
wants
that
to
sounds
hear.
good, though, for some reason.
Yeah.
But if you think about,
You're going to eat 8 egg white omelets a day.
That's a good
I
Cruise
am?
impression.
Like,
he was 8 egg whites a day.
It's going to be tough work.
But it was De Palma, and then it was John Woo.
Yeah.
Correct,
And then, of course, he wanted another.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Right? There's this kind of baton pass of like, oh, these are like huge thriller directors.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I just think Fincher, every other point in his career, from Alien 3 on, anytime something like this is floated to him, is like 99 out of 100 guys would fall for this.
Yeah.
and I know. Right. I went through that crucible.
I already did it.
The trap.
Yeah.
And this is the one time it felt like he let himself believe a little bit.
Yeah. It was that cruise magic.
It's the cruise magic.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Some other things, and I feel like we've mentioned all these before. Lords of Dogtown, he was attached sort of at one point, and then he was trying to mentor Fred Durst into making it.
It was Durst first. It was a Durst-developed project.
Yeah, you're right.
And then they were like, this is
Durst,
too big a budget for Durst.
Right, is kicked off. Fincher steps in and then is like, forget it.
And I know in a classic kind of Fincher thing, the budget thing was he was like, okay, so I need $15 million to reconstruct the pier.
Right. And
they were like,
David.
CGI.
David.
And he was like, you have to rebuild the pier at full scale.
So it's 1971 again. Like
Right,
we
or
have
I
to
won't
do
make
that.
the
Oh
movie.
my God.
And he was attached to The Lookout, which is one of those movies that eventually gets made by Scott Frank with Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Right.
But like that was a script that was attached
A
to
little
like
bit of a
zillion
stay
people.
script, but instead it turns out pretty well.
And then Button, of course, which he's pushing up the hill for all of the 2000s.
Yeah.
And
they want him to do, and they think he's the guy who can finally sort of solve the movie for them.
Right.
So I think Zodiac is like, he's already dancing with them on Button.
Right.
And then he like brings a third into the dance.
Which is why the dumping in March seems so weird to me. Because I'm like,
weird.
because if they're so invested in him for the Button of it all.
Yeah, Leslye, I don't know if you know this, but studios are often irrational and act against their own interests.
Dumb.
Do they? Oh my God.
I don't know if you've heard.
I don't know
the
this.
news.
I'm so
He's got a great quote in this dossier where he's like, you talk to studios and you like pitch them a movie and they're like $150 million, that's too much. And then 3 years later, they greenlight the same movie and say it's a bargain.
Right. Because they've gone through some level, whatever. We don't need to. And then the other thing is, first he's going to direct a script that was written by James Ellroy called The Night Watchman.
Mm-hmm.
That falls apart. And then he gets attached to the Black Dahlia.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, let's make this as a massive miniseries, TV, like film level miniseries. He's basically pitching like what he eventually gets to do.
Which it should be, by the way.
Yeah.
Because those Ellroy books, which I love, are all, doorstops. They're huge. And, he's like, give me $80 million for a TV miniseries. In the mid-2000s, that scene is ludicrous.
They go, the limited prestige series is dead. It is never coming back. It will not, in fact, destroy movies.
Now you're like, hey, can I have $80 million for a TV show? They're like, for one episode, maybe. And then that turns into a movie that De Palma makes. A flawed but interesting film, I would say. And so Zodiac happens. Shane Salerno.
Mm-hmm.
The
writer of Shaft. Singleton Shaft.
Yeah. Why were we just talking about him?
Well, he's in the upcoming. He's in the
Avatar
writers room.
World. Oh, right. He wrote Alien versus Predator.
Oh, right.
That's why we were talking about.
But an incredibly bizarre career.
Yeah.
A sort of like Wonderkin documentary. He makes a documentary in high school that gets picked up, and then he gets brought into the NYPD Blue writers room as the sort of apprentice, and then is sort of off and running in this sort of true crime bent.
He buys the rights to the book that the real Robert Graysmith writes.
Yeah.
He loves the book when he's a teenager, Zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
Develops it for years, kicks it to James Vanderbilt, he of the Vanderbilts.
But wasn't it with Disney?
Yes.
At some
he
point?
signs up with Touchstone.
Salerno sells it to Touchstone in like 99.
Guys, remember
that sounds right.
Touchstone?
I miss it.
I miss it.
Touchstone so
I want to
badly.
touch the stone again.
I want to touch the stone.
Bring me back, Pretty Woman.
Do you know what's an underrated
Roger
period?
Rabbit.
Well, yes.
Well, speaking of Roger Rabbit's in this movie.
He's in this
You don't
movie.
want to go in his basement. What?
He is.
Oh, yes.
That's him.
Yeah,
Roger
that's
Rabbit.
him. Yeah.
Speaking of Roger Rabbit, speaking of Touchstone.
Speaking of Touchstone, I loved when Disney made their deal with DreamWorks. and just briefly revived Touchstone to release the DreamWorks movies.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Where like Lincoln is a Touchstone film and Bridge of Spies is a Touchstone film. And it was like we had like Touchstone had basically died, and then there was like 5 years where that logo came back. And it was lovely. Now it's gone again.
James Vanderbilt, and I say this with all due respect to a man who's had a long and successful career in Hollywood, has never written a movie as good as Zodiac.
Oh no.
I have a couple theories.
Crazy. Well, yeah. I mean, the main theory obviously is that, you know, Fincher worked on this movie and all that. But like, it's just interesting that I think of him as a pretty reliable blockbuster kind of guy these days, right? He did Spider-Man. He does the Scream movies. He does the Adam Sandler murder mysteries. 2
Roland Emmerich movies, 2 murder mysteries.
Right. It's like, yeah,
Scream.
okay, he's sort of like a pro, but he's not like this movie. You're like, this screenplay is like a brilliant work of like research and order. And like, it's so, you know, and it's like, just funny that he's the only credited scriptwriter, but he is.
This movie came out and you were like, because I mean, Leslye, you know this better than anyone, but it's like oftentimes a writer's credits do not actually represent who they are in Hollywood, where you're like, well, you make 20 great scripts that are unproduced. The thing that comes out's been rewritten to shreds or whatever. And so he has like his year where he hits the map is.
He wrote 3 movies in 2003.
Right.
Darkness Falls, Basic, and The Rundown. And as he puts it, he says,
is a hot year in terms of just getting 3
getting movies made.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Yeah.
But he says, I'd had 3 movies made. One was about a killer tooth fairy. That's Darkness Falls. One was this John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson movie that isn't Pulp Fiction.
Good line.
That's Basic.
Good line.
And The Rundown I do love, but it's The Rock's second action movie.
Right.
You know, it's not exactly Shakespeare.
Right. Although now it's maybe one of his better movies.
It's a fun movie.
But yes, when this movie comes out, you're like, oh, well, this is who this guy is.
Yes.
And now we're dealing with like a fucking powerhouse.
Yeah.
And then it is when he starts getting hired onto like Spider-Man, because he's originally hired to write Spider-Man 4 or 5 before it then turns into Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's writing a Raimi sequel that then gets rebooted and whatever. And I was like, well, this is equivalent to them hiring Alvin Sargent to write the Raimi films. Like, I took that news as like, this is elevated.
It's absolutely, like, the script reminds me so much of LA Confidential.
Yeah.
Like, it reminds me so much of that, like, you know,
methodical.
It restarts in the middle of it. There's like, you know, that Wheel of Fortune scene in LA Confidential where all of this, it's like, you think it feels like it should be over, and then boom, the movie starts up again. And literally each scene is like, just as the scenes are ending, you can feel the next scene being like, get out of the way, I'm here. You know, like there's just like, there's such an artistry to it that I agree. It's a little incongruous with.
Is LA Confidential one of your favorite movies? Because it's one of mine.
I would say it's up there for sure. I mean, it was a huge movie for me. I would say when I was younger. I haven't watched it in a bit, but I would put it in the Zodiac category of like a nook and cranny movie that you can exist in and live in. And it's a whole world. And like, again, you're like, which part is coming next? Is it this part or this part?
Right. The interrogation's coming up. Great.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Yeah. No, I love this.
Every scene's my favorite scene.
Every scene is your favorite scene.
Yeah.
And it really does feel like it follows, Zodiac feels like it follows in the footsteps of that.
A couple important script context things. The Salerno script was much more of a thriller.
Yeah, well, and it has the big
hook.
This concept of like, and then the Zodiac returns.
Right.
Like it's set in modern day San Francisco and he's back.
So it's sort of like an adaptation of Grace Smith's nonfiction book and a speculative
with the
sequel.
what if all of a sudden we got another letter. You know,
like we all know that Custer died at Little Bighorn. What this book presupposes is what if he didn't? You know,
but that's basically like Shane Salerno in 1999 being like, what's the version of this that's sellable to Disney?
And Shane Salerno seems like, again, the man wrote Alien versus Predator. He's more in the lurid space.
Yeah. But also like, and he's writing a lot of like true crime stuff at this point in time. But I think he's like, the whole thing that makes this movie so great, but makes it so difficult is that it's like, there is no resolution, and we have to live with the lack of resolution.
Yeah.
And he's trying to make a movie where someone can win. There can be some closure, which means you need to tack on a fantastical thriller.
Vanderbilt is very much like in his like pitch notes being like, there will be no resolution.
Because he's going to Grace Smith, and Grace Smith's like, I've been down this road. And his pitch to Grace Smith is, I'm going to do the movie that lives in the space of what this actually was, the frustration, the obsession, the longing.
And Fincher, when he reads Vanderbilt's script, because Fincher is the first choice because he made 7, But I'm sure Fincher, that's the thing. Ever since he makes Seven, if there's some serial killer movie, is getting sent it and going like, well, I don't want to do that. But of course, the Zodiac Killer is much more meaningful to him.
Vanderbilt says, they told me, well, we're going to offer it to Fincher. And I went, great, let's get that out of the way so we can go on to the list of the real directors. Why would he want to do this again?
And Fincher, obviously, yes, he grew up in the shadow of the Zodiac, so it's like in his brain in a way that most, but he's also like, I see this as a newspaper story, like an All the President's Men kind of movie. And Vanderbilt's like, yeah, okay, you get it. Like,
you know. Not only does this guy want to do the movie, which I wasn't expecting, but he wants to do this movie for the reasons I didn't think he would want to.
Right.
And then Fincher says to him, great. So now you need to go and spend the next 18 months interviewing every single person.
He was like, anyway, now, well, I'll read a couple books and then let's start production in 2 weeks. Yeah, no, then they're like, right, we're going to interview every single survivor, every fucking cop and journalist we can get our hands on.
Like, you imagine
18 months of like deep research.
You imagine the script was very good at the point the Fincher read it, but it was a script that was an adaptation of the book.
Yeah.
And then he was like, now you need to essentially become Robert Graysmith, do your own investigation.
Yes, exactly.
Dig into all of these people.
Yeah.
And like just deepen the script.
Yeah.
Which is just circumstances that are kind of like unreplicatable in terms of why this script stands out in the rest of his career.
Yeah.
Like Graysmith is so full of praise for him. And my favorite thing is that him being like the attention to detail this man had and all that is that like there's no flashlight shot in the movie where you can really see the flashlight on the road. Even though the Zodiac Killer had claimed he could like put a flashlight on his gun so that you could see it. And Fincher went to a flashlight museum.
Stop.
And said like, so in 1969, were there bulbs that existed that could have done this? And they like searched their like bulb archive and were like, no, there's no way. And Fincher was like, then it couldn't be done. Like, and so the flashlight will look like this in the movie, like shit like that.
Where is the flashlight museum?
Great question. I'd love to go there with David Fincher.
David Fincher, please, dear Lord.
Patreon app.
God, that made me really excited. I'm not gonna lie.
No, it's so good.
I'm very titillated by that story.
Graysmith's quote is essentially, he outdid the police. My hat's off to him. Like,
oh my God.
Right, he came in with questions that people had not asked in 40 years of investigating this case.
Right.
Well, I think isn't that part of the appeal of Graysmith in general to as well, like in writing the book, was that he was just the guy that like it didn't feel like a reporter. It didn't feel like a cop.
He's not Department of Justice, right? He's not like some, monkey on their back. He's this nerd.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is I think the way that Fincher kind of Trojan horses a studio into greenlighting this movie is that pitch sounds a little sticky.
Right.
Of like, and he's just some guy. He's a cartoonist
right.
who finds himself in the Senate. He's an everyman.
And it's Jake Gyllenhaal coming off of Brokeback.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there couldn't be hotter, you know?
Yeah.
And it's me doing serial killers again.
Yes.
Right.
Like, you can see them ignoring what the actual script is.
Exactly. They're just so excited. They're just like so over
and they know
the
how they can sell a movie like that.
And then they get a 3-hour.
Right. They're like, why is it long? Why is there a 3-minute sequence of them talking on the phone to Dermot Mulroney, literally doing what cops have to do of like, here are the various reasons we deserve a warrant.
You're talking about getting the warrant.
Which is not in the theatrical cut.
Yeah,
like,
but
it's only on the
cut.
DVD.
Yeah.
Right. Because that was one of the scenes where the studio is like, absolutely not.
Get the fuck out of here.
Like, Fincher's like, I thought it was funny, because it was kind of like Charlie's Angels,
Right, that's
like,
his joke, yes.
Like, he's like, I thought it was a joke, and the studio's like pulling their hair out.
It's like, they're like, it's 2 hours into the movie. Like, we know they need a warrant. Like, come on.
Do you realize Graysmith meets Toschi at 1 hour and 40 minutes into the film?
Way late into the movie. Yeah.
Way into the movie.
Yeah, no, of course. And like, it's not like a movie where they're like, part 1, the journalist, part 2, the cops, part 3, Graysmith. It's like baton passing back and forth.
Those three guys, and this is why it's like LA Confidential, though. It's those three guys. It just kind of
it's those
seamlessly,
3 guys, but like
the movie just kind of like passes it.
There's different alliances.
Exactly.
Right.
Like we're gonna pass it off to Avery. Now we're gonna pass it off to
Avery
Toschi.
kind of departs like halfway, 2/3 of the way into the movie. Like he's basically gone, and
like the Kevin Spacey character.
Well, he departs all right,
but he's also like still alive.
Rollo Tomassi. What?
That Avery's still alive, but like haunting the movie like a ghost.
Like
every
a ghost,
once in a while, you see him again. You're like, fuck, that guy's
library.
just like a ruined man in the wake of this.
Doing
that we
great.
moved
What are you
past.
talking about? You
Yeah,
don't play
lives on a
pong,
boat.
drinking quarts of vodka in the morning on your houseboat.
God, this fucking movie.
I love this movie so much.
Oh, there's someone at the door.
Ben, would you mind just getting the door quickly? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Creek.
Hey, buddy.
Hello.
How's it going, man?
I'm doing okay. Sir, what's going on?
Not
We're in the middle of a
much,
record.
Man, not too much.
Okay.
Staying mellow, you know.
Cool. Yeah. What are you doing here? How can I help you?
Yeah, my name's Trip Flippy.
Okay, Trip Flippy. I see the skateboard.
Yeah, I'm Trip Flippy. I just like to keep things chill and mellow, man.
Cool.
But
Okay.
I got one vice. I don't know if you can tell from my energy. There's like one thing I like to do that helps me mellow out.
I don't know. Tell me.
I like to get hired.
Oh.
You could say I'm something of a job head. I love kicking back with a nice job, man.
Okay.
I like to get hired.
That's cool. Well,
I'm cool.
Can I tell you a little bit about a cool service that's maybe just right up your alley?
Yeah, man, totally.
It's actually this week's sponsored Indeed.
What?
Yeah, that's right. Indeed is a hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place.
They get you hired?
That's right. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's powerful hiring platform can help you do all that.
I can just like upload my resume to Indeed, then people hire me.
That's right. It's streamlined hiring with powerful tools that find you match candidates.
Blowing my mind right now, man.
And with Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates.
Yeah.
Such as someone like yourself.
Yeah.
Whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed data.
Yeah, baby. That rules. Yeah.
So something that I really love, right, about Indeed.
Yeah. Because you're like kind of like, you run a small business, right?
I do.
That's why I knocked on the door. I thought I was asking if there was a job.
Yeah. I don't have a job for you currently.
Okay.
But I mean, I'd be interested to definitely read your resume. I see you just have there in your hand.
Yeah.
Just looks like a bag full of doobies.
That's what I call my resume. No, these are rolled up resumes. Let me take this out for you.
Wow.
Look at
that. I got to say,
tightly rolled resumes, hand rolled.
You've got impressive handwriting in that it's so sloppy. I can barely read it.
Yeah. Well, because it's hard to fit all these jobs on one resume.
Okay.
I work 800 jobs.
Yeah.
As I said, I'm a job head.
Well, I would say if you scan this and upload it to Indeed, you're bound to maybe get hired somewhere.
I heard a rumor that candidates who are invited to apply are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, according to US Indeed data. And you get one step closer to the hire by immediately matching with quality candidates.
Yeah, that's the thing about Indeed. It does the hard work for you. Indeed shows you candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your description immediately after you post, so you can hire fast. Indeed's hiring platform matches you with quality candidates instantly.
Well, that's rad. So like, I don't know, like, is there any sort of like call to action, or is it just kind of like people are left to their own devices to do what they want?
Okay, here's the call to action.
Oh, cool.
Start hiring now with the $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/check. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/check. Just go to Indeed.com/check and support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/check. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the podcast, by the way. You want to know what my favorite episode was?
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, man. Get out of here, Trip Flippy.
I think we're going to be hearing a lot from Trip.
I think Trip Flippy is going to be a little bit of a regular.
Everyone who made the movie basically was like, it was like Chinese water torture. David Fincher is a maniac. I respect and love him, but oh my God.
Oh yeah, the first scene that they shot was the scene on the steps where he's like, stop calling my house. It's like after he's been accused, Tosky's been accused of writing the letter.
Right.
And they said that he shot it 56 times.
Yeah.
And they were just like, help.
I would say Gyllenhaal's the biggest on the record baby about it. Partly, I think, because he would even say now, like,
yes,
I was immature about it a little bit.
He's 26.
He's
when they're
very
filming this movie,
young.
27.
And 1980. So yeah, it'd be about 25, 26.
Downey's happy to be there because he was uninsurable 2 years earlier.
For Downey, I think it's huge, but Downey is hilarious and rueful about like, it's a lot.
He told
and there's the anecdote about him peeing in jars and like bringing them around, being like, I can't go to my fucking trailer, so I guess I'll pee in this jar.
Yes. There's a really good anecdote.
Gyllenhaal has the Fincher paints with people line. Like,
Yes.
it's tough to be a color, where I'm like, you poor baby.
Oh,
you happen to
wow.
be in the best movie ever
He's
made.
also
Like,
so good in it. That's
he's
the thing that's so
amazing.
annoying is because like
he's
you listen,
really well cast.
you listen to him on the commentary and he's actively complaining in the
Yes.
commentary and saying, you know, oh, we had to do this so many times, we had to do this. And but he's so good in it that it's kind of strange to me. Because also, you know, after this movie, doesn't he kind of go down like a weird space?
He goes down
He has
very
a
weird-
little bit of a weird run.
And then we get Prisoners and he's back.
Yes.
Make your
Right.
point, Griffin, but yes, then a note on Gyllenhaal.
When is this film shooting? What's the run of the shoot? I want to make sure I'm not wrong before I say this.
Basically September 2005 to February 2006.
So this is a big part of it, I know. And there was sort of like whispers and gossip around this in comment section at the time. And now in later interviews, both of them have corroborated this.
Okay.
This movie is filming during the Brokeback campaign season.
Ooh,
Right.
Got
Sure,
it.
sure,
Got
It
it.
Yeah,
starts
it's very
filming
true.
basically right as the movie's premiering
Yeah.
at the festivals, the fall festivals, running through the whole season. He wraps right before he actually has to go to the Oscars. And he's like the guy.
Yep.
He's now being pushed as like finally maybe his moment's like coming to escalate up to like the A-list status. And Fincher will not release him to do shit.
Right.
And Fincher's like,
We're making
you
Zodiac
signed
here,
up,
buddy.
you're here.
Yeah.
You have to be 100% focused in on this, right? And the other times he's worked with like A-list actors, it's someone like Pitt who's like, I need to like rebuild myself.
Right. And also Pitt's like, I don't want to play that game. I don't care. Like, you know.
I hate this game.
that's true.
I'm giving myself over to you. Break me and rebuild
Like
me.
when Pitt
Yeah.
played the game to win the Oscar for Hollywood,
Yes.
that was him finally being like, oh, you guys want me to like show up and smile and like
Right.
do some jokes? I'll do that. And
I'm
they
divorced.
They were like, take the Oscar, please,
Right.
Brad. You know, like he didn't, but he had been like ignoring that for a long time.
But I
right.
think Gyllenhaal's like, this is my moment. Everything's being handed to me in every sense. A, I'm not going to these like awards functions. He's not letting me attend them, right? B, there's all this other press I can be doing. Fincher was like, he was constantly surrounded by like 10 people.
I'll give you the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. He says Jake was in the unenviable position of being young and having a lot of people vie for his attention while working for someone who does not allow you to take a day off,
Mhm.
Mr. Fincher.
Mhm.
He made a bunch of movies. I don't think he'd ever been asked to concentrate on minutia. I think he was very distracted. He had people whispering that Jarhead was going to be a massive movie that put him in another league because
Oh,
that's
right.
going to
Coming.
come out.
Yes.
Every weekend he was being pulled to go to Santa Barbara and the Palm Springs Film Festival and the expletive Catalina Film Festival. Guess Catalina doesn't meet David's.
It's the fucking Catalina Film Festival.
And when he'd show up for work, he was very scattered. He had his managers and his silly agents who were coming to his trailers at lunch to talk about the cover of GQ.
That's the exact
He
thing
was being
Fincher
nibbled
doesn't
to
want.
death by ducks and
Yes.
not particularly smart ducks.
Right.
It was hard for him to hit the fastball. Now, the way Fincher's talking about it, you're like, it almost sounds like, and that's why he's terrible in the movie. And you're like, you got a very good performance
Well,
out of
No,
it.
I
you
don't
did,
think
yeah.
it was like it was deliberate or by design, but all of that actually kind of helps the movie. I
It
think
does,
the
It
yeah.
friction
helps latter half Grace
him
Smith.
being
Yeah.
trapped in the film
Yes.
and
yeah,
being
yeah, yeah.
forced to obsessively do this over and over again. I think he's like, not just I want to get my flowers and fucking like own this award season and go to every like banquet and whatever, where Fincher's like, you get to go to like 5% of them.
Yeah.
But also people are like strategizing. He's at like presidential campaign
Right.
level of like, are you going to be a major movie star?
Yeah.
Where they want him to do everything. And he probably also wants to like go out and fucking party and shit.
I also think that it doesn't help that the character is so passive for the first half of the movie.
Yeah,
Like that,
a lot
that
of scenes of him
so
being
many
a little
scenes are him sort of
goose.
just reacting.
And Ruffalo and RDJ are so cool in this movie. And it's like,
Exactly,
right, I'm
yeah.
playing the Boy Scout.
And to do 60 takes of like reading a letter.
or scribbling down a thing.
Yeah.
Or reacting to like, oh, I guess my theory is wrong. You know, like it just I can see that sort of also grating on him. Like, where's my moment? Like, when do I get to?
I think so much of it is that it was also just like the fact that it was the Brokeback Award.
No, you're right.
season.
No, I think it's a fair call.
it makes sense.
It's the only Oscar season he ever got to be a part of thus far.
There is an exchange on the David Pryor extensive making of documentary that I think about all the time, where Fincher is doing what is clearly like take 60 over the shoulder close up of his hands, scribbling something, right?
Yeah.
And he's giving him some note. And like Gyllenhaal looks up to him like a little kid wanting the approval of your dad at the baseball game. And he's like, I'm good at inserts, right? Like I think I'm like particularly good at inserts.
God.
And Fincher in his way goes like, no, you are good at inserts. You know, it's the actual like dialogue scenes that aren't usable.
Oh my God, David!
David.
And he's like, and then he kind of hits him. He's like, I'm kidding. And Gyllenhaal's like, yeah, I know, but I am good at inserts, right?
Oh my God.
And Fincher's like, yes, you are.
Good job,
and he goes,
buddy.
and you know why? Because I understand why they're important.
Jesus.
And he's like so desperate to be like, I want you to give me the credit for acknowledging that I understand that this isn't meaningless.
Yes, yeah.
I'm really trying to focus on like giving you what you need. I don't think because it's just my hand, it's not acting. But it's like their whole dynamic in a nutshell.
Yeah.
You can extrapolate from that.
Yeah.
My favorite line actually is Ruffalo saying like, I did my first day with 68 takes with Jake. It's the scene you were talking about. And I was
68,
like, I was like, please kill me. And Fincher came over walking up at some point. I was like, I hope he's coming here to fire me. The idea of like one day and you're like, I hope Fincher's going to be like, Mark, that's enough. You're
That's
like,
enough.
You're not.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
The actors who work best within Fincher's system, and it does feel like Ruffalo got there. By his admission, he was the one who took to it the most.
He says, I finally understood, quote, he's taking a stab at immortality, which I think is a really great line from Ruffalo. Right. Yeah. Like he decided good enough is not fucking good enough.
Which is a great line as well.
Yeah.
But
I
also,
think Ruffalo's kind of a great...
Like people like Eisenberg talk about, and it's kind of surprising that it comes from him considering how neurotic he is.
Yeah.
But that he's like, at a certain moment, it actually becomes comforting to go like, there is so little pressure on any one take. As much as you know he's like striving for immortality and perfection, he's given you the space to have each take just be like, and just try stuff.
And
try
just do
stuff.
it.
Because we're going to keep doing it. We're not moving on until we have it. So rest assured, I will not let this be done until I have the take I want. And Gyllenhaal talks about, like, for me, I like the pressure cooker of, you only have 5 takes to get this right. I want the risk.
There is something about that in my experience where you're like, oh my God, we're running out of time, or we're going to get kicked out of this location or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, you know, it's like famously Tommy Lee Jones did that, you know, big monologue in the Fugitive twice. You know, they had 2 takes that they just like, you know, spliced together and then that was it. And, you know, wins him an Oscar, you know, like, it's like, there is something about that. I think that when you watch Fincher's stuff though, it seems like it would be impossible to, again, his staging with camera, it would be impossible to do unless you'd done it 56 times. Because the camera is moving perfectly.
Yes.
The camera's not just like sort of like tilting up when Gyllenhaal stands up when he's talking about, door to door, I've walked it, like that whole diner scene at the end, like such an incredible scene. But even just the way the camera moves to capture him, like as a director watching that move, you're like, your camera guy and the actor and everything has to be working at the same moment.
Yeah.
So that it's perfect. And I envy the money and the time and the power that Fincher has to do that. And yet at the same time, I'm not sure that I would be a better filmmaker if I had that, to be quite honest.
Specific mind.
Yeah.
But like in my past experience as an actor, the most frustrating feeling in the world is to be like, that was the take.
Yeah.
And you like hit your fucking like scene mate on the shoulder and you're like, that was it. We fucking got it. And then you hear someone go like, sound was off on that one.
Right.
And then the director yells from behind the monitor like, okay, so we'll go with take 3. Versus Fincher being like, if sound is off but performance was right in that one, we're going to keep going until the take where both are correct. It's not just about making actors do it 80 times.
No, it's not.
So bad at
that's the thing.
Which people lose that, I think, in talking about him.
I agree when they talk about him. I think they're thinking he's exacting on the performances. He's exacting on every single aspect of it. You just can't do what he does.
No.
Unless you're doing takes, that are in the double digits. I just, I think it would be impossible.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's a really good Downey anecdote that he told recently in doing sort of his really good career look back stuff in the Oppenheimer press tour.
Yeah.
Where he was like, I found it so frustrating. And there was a day, and Downey, I think, prides himself on being like, I can nail it.
Yeah.
Like, even when I was back down on heroin, I could do it in 3 takes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I get results.
Home for the holidays.
I'll give you
most relaxed performance in history.
I'll give you the Downey quote now, and then we should talk about the plot of the movie. But sure. I do love this particular quote.
This might be a different one than the one that Dossie. But
sometimes it's really hard because it might not feel collaborative. But ultimately, filmmaker is a director's medium. I just decided, aside from several times I wanted to garrote him, that I was going to give him what he wanted. I think I'm a perfect person to work for him because I understand gulags.
That's the great quote. The one he said on the Oppenheimer press tour was that like they were doing 60 takes of some scene, right? With him and Gyllenhaal. And he was just like, David, what is the fucking holdup?
Yeah.
I guarantee you 10 of those were usable. I know it. Even if you're being as like discerning as you are.
Right, yeah.
Right. And Fincher was like, okay, Robert, come back here with me. And he made him watch all the takes on the monitor. And he went, Robert, what do you think? Do we have it?
Oh,
and he went, oh, you're right. We don't have it.
That's Robert
and
Downey
Fincher
Jr. is the one who's like, he's right. I hate to admit.
Right. And Fincher steps out from Video Village and he went, I thought it was good enough, but Downey Jr. said, we don't have it. So we're delete them all.
Delete them all.
Right.
Get rid of them.
Right. That's the other problem.
But he's like, that's the moment where I went, he is right.
But this is also the first movie where he's shooting digitally, obviously, which is a crucial part of this movie.
Gorgeous.
It looks incredible.
How?
A film that was shot in 1080p.
Yes.
1080p, it looks stunning.
But it does also mean that he is literally from Video Village going, delete that take.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it's crushing for people like Gyllenhaal, who's like, I've made it.
Yeah.
To hear like, a recycling bin for that one. Or Robert Downey Jr., who's like, I have battled against the fucking tsunami of drug addiction for 20 years. Yes. I'm here again. And it's like, delete.
Do you think the sound of the trash when you drag it and plays on set?
Yeah, Fincher would put a microphone up to the, So, like that must have been demoralizing. But you know what?
They made one of the great movies.
They made one of the great movies. It's the Ruffalo thing. It's the stab at immortality, and they did it.
Right, yeah.
Paris Savita shot this movie, maybe
That's
the best cinematographer of my lifetime.
Yeah.
Gone far too soon.
Yes, and I do think that's part of why it looks so goddamn good.
It's just like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make, I mean, as somebody that only shoots on digital and was only given the opportunity to shoot on digital, there was never a conversation that I've ever had about film versus digital. It was just like, if you want to make this, you're shooting, on the Red, you're shooting on the Alexa, you're shooting. That's another reason this is one of my favorite movies, because it's like, it can look gorgeous.
It gives you hope. Yeah.
It gives me hope. I'm just like, it can look absolutely stunning.
The Thompson Viper.
The Viper, yes, that's right. Yeah.
It feels like Fincher is...
Man used that on Miami Vice as well.
Sure.
Did he use it on Collateral?
I'm not sure. I think no. I think on Collateral he was using...
Because Collateral looks like shit.
My cell phone.
I'm going on
I was going to say, my cell phone from the time.
Yeah.
Right. He was using my Nokia 3300.
Sorry.
No, Fincher is just so
To be clear,
good.
I love how Collateral looks, but it's of its moment.
But it
What a
looks like
dick.
shit. It owns looking like shit.
Yeah.
Park Chan-wook also used the Viper film. Thompson Viper
I'm a
on
Cyborg.
I'm a
Right.
Cyborg.
Yeah.
So we recently talked about that.
No, Fincher just knows how to like... This is a period where people are still like, how do we make video look exactly like film?
Yes, yeah.
And he's like, no, you need to like push up the things that only video can do.
Yes.
And this is to an oft-used Sims term, a Simsian phrase that I think about a lot. This is a movie where the look of it makes your teeth hurt.
Oh, yeah.
In a good way, where there's something about like, there's something a little too clinical.
Too clear. I can see too much, I guess.
Even though it's a lower resolution than we're now used to, this film feels clearer.
I watched my Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it looks worse on streaming or something.
I watched the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
The other thing with video, he just says it was like less about him liking digital cameras more and more about workflow.
He that's what he always says. He's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I like to work in low light. It's perfect for that.
Yeah.
I like to be able to look at takes and sort through them
Get a
quickly.
bigger
It's good for
monitor
that.
that's more
Yeah.
representative
Right,
in real time of what it looks like,
Right.
all
Yeah.
that
He-
stuff.
He talks like that.
It's
about
easier to adjust the image. He knew he was going to do all
And then it's
digital
us critics who are like, he can see across America's digital horizon. And he's like, if you say so. It plugs into my Mac. That's what I like about it.
Basically, it was like, I'm tired.
Right. Right.
There's a
Exactly.
great quote in the dossier of like, I just never again wanted to sit around and watch someone take $1,000 of film out of a camera,
Yeah.
get a black bag,
Yeah.
put $1,000 worth of film into the bag, back into the camera, and just like sit on my ass while that happens.
Okay, can we talk about the movie? Zodiac
Please.
begins with the Lover's Lane and Vallejo
Yeah.
killing, right? That's the first sequence.
You don't see the first killing because
No.
it had no survivors, and thus
And also, it's sort of like, it's how people discovered the Zodiac murder was a murder happened, and this guy was like, I did this, and also,
Right.
by the way, I did that other
Which I
one.
think
By
is
the way,
great.
yeah.
Right, so
but
you
it's so
have
great
to
to start it
get
and be
back
like,
to
this
it.
is the beginning, and then immediately be told, no, this is now basically the start of a pattern that's being
Right.
linked back to a thing you didn't see.
I just remember sitting in the theater and hearing like goodbye and just being like, I've never been so scared in my life. Something that I think the first scene captures is like the real randomness of the violence.
Right.
Of course, once you finish the movie, everything, like any good cold open,
Yeah.
everything you need to know is actually in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, like you understand who Darlene is, you understand that she's married, but she's with Mike. You understand that she is scared of somebody, like all of those things that get revealed later.
Right. When you're watching it the first time, you're like, she clearly just wants to like make out with this guy, and he's being kind of nervy, and
Yeah.
she's annoyed about it.
And then there's like a creepy car. Okay, great. You know, but the idea of like a random act of violence that's seemingly motiveless
right.
Yes.
is
It's not on their mind.
not on their mind.
Right.
And I think it's not on our minds, you know,
Yes.
normally. Like,
Well,
we
it's
just,
on my mind because the film's called, my stub says Zodiac, so I am worried about it. No, I'm like so tense in the fucking theater.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, of course, right. That's not what they're thinking when they're going to Lover's Lane. Like, what if we got shot though by the Zodiac killer?
Are we going to talk about the dolly shot at the beginning?
Yes.
What
Sure.
the hell?
Okay.
What the hell?
Back we go.
Sorry.
yeah,
No, it's fine.
But what the fuck? Like that's the type of thing that as a filmmaker, you're just like, if I pitched that, you know, I would be laughed out of the room. Like
Yes.
people would say, I'm so sorry. Please, you're excused. Thank you so much for being here. But we are
Thanks for playing. But
thanks for playing, but we never want to see you again. Attach the camera to the car
Right.
and shut the
like
fuck up.
everybody
We
does.
don't
You know, like
Yes.
everybody else, you know, like, and he builds what, 40,
Miles of track.
Yes.
40 it's
Yes.
like 40 yards of fucking dolly track just to, and it is that panic room kind of thing as well, of just like the camera kind of perfectly moving,
Gliding,
gliding
right.
seamlessly to like bring you into this, like, you know, here's this suburban tableau of Americana.
This coming after Panic Room, it's like he's really just strengthened that sense of like camera as a character.
Yes.
Where there's this unerring quality to
Yeah.
like this camera that seems to be moving with a mind of its own.
Is he Hitchcock's successor?
in certain ways?
Yeah.
I think no. I
No?
think he would. I mean, he obviously cites Hitchcock so massively, but like so do so many people. But like, I think Hitchcock would watch something like Zodiac and be like, "Oh, why is it so fucking long?"
Yeah.
You know,
Fair enough.
Yeah.
right?
Good
Like,
point.
Yeah.
yeah, like Hitchcock would be like, "This is not really obeying my kind of taught, storytelling
He's using
sensibilities."
a lot of the tools. It's like he inherited a lot of the
Of course.
equipment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know the thing about the clothes?
The cloves.
I mean, this is the clothes.
What about
the
the clothes?
clothing? This is such a like Fincher being vindicated by the obsessiveness of
Ugh.
like getting the details right. He said like people always ask me when I was going to make my Amacord, and this is it.
Yeah.
And he's not a character in it, but he is
Yeah.
because he's growing up in this era, and also because it's a movie about like the pursuit of
Yes.
the kid. What's his name? The
Mike Mageau.
yes.
Yeah, Lee Norris is the young
So it's
Mike Mageau.
4th
Jimmy
of July
Simpson is-
in
yeah,
real life. The real Mike Mageau
right?
was wearing 3 pairs of pants,
What?
3 sweaters, and a shirt over it.
Because he was cold, or because he was trying to look beefy. No one knows.
Fucking
No one knows.
knows.
Right? You don't
But
know.
it's a hard fact. The conspiracy theorists are like, he like bulked up, which is why he survived,
Sure.
because he had a feeling he was going to be in danger. Even if it wasn't the Zodiac, there's the feeling of her husband or something.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Right. And he was sort of
It
insulated
makes
in this
sense
way
that
with
that's
body
part
armor.
of why he
Because why
survived,
else would
sure.
he be wearing 5 layers and
To
like
look bigger than he was, because he was a teenager.
which is the
Yeah.
second part of it. And you're
Right.
like, well, that's just this weird human little emotional nugget that you would never think to write.
Well,
Yes.
but he's
But
also
is there and isn't unpacked or explained.
he's
Yeah.
this look. I mean, they talk about it in a movie, but he's this interesting thing of like there was a survivor, but they could never talk to him.
Yes.
Because he just left. He was just like, I don't want to talk about it.
I'm done.
Yeah. And like, they're like, no, we really are trying to figure out who shot you though.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't care. I'm going off the grid. Like, and it's the 70s, so you won't find me.
Yeah.
Like, and so he did. And then when he resurfaced years later, she was like, John Carroll Lynch guy kind of looks like the guy. Anyway, how you doing?
Greatest ending.
Great. Jimmy Simpson, amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we have that. And is that the real 911 call, or it can't be, right?
I think it can't be.
Right. That would be crazy.
Yeah.
But that call, like the goodbye, is so freaky.
It haunts me.
But then after that, okay, we're in the credits. I'm now actually just watching Zodiac. I just have it on.
Because then you're sort of
We're in San
doing the
Francisco.
mail cart through the Chronicle offices,
Yes.
establishing the space, but also
Yes.
giving you the vibe,
Yeah.
the energy. He wanted
You
to
get
do
the recreation of
The newsroom.
of the newsroom, but also the port of San Francisco.
Yeah. The Transamerica building isn't built yet. Yeah.
The highway that collapsed in the earthquake, he's rebuilt. Like, he wants to start with that.
Yeah.
Like he wants to start with like it's San Francisco.
right, like full-time machine. We're not going for pastiche or kitsch or
Yes.
The great
Yeah.
John Getz as the editor in chief,
as good as it gets.
looking at his cartoons, which do look really
Horrid.
bad.
Bad.
Horrid.
Slightly less horrid.
What is it? Not so horrid.
Not
right?
so horrid.
Let's
yeah.
go with not so horrid. Yeah. Do you think Graysmith was good? Because you're like, you don't give me incisive political cartoonist vibes, right? Like when
No.
you're like seeing him in this movie.
Not in the movie.
Yeah. Do you think he was a good cartoonist?
Like, he was like a skilled draftsman with no
right, well, he
voice.
could draw. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I should look that up, like
We should
Robert
look at
Graysmith's cartoons.
Yeah.
It's like sort of telling where he ended up. Not
Yeah.
only just like in this, but then he just continued writing like true crime
Yeah.
books.
Right.
Because he wrote Autofocus as well.
He sure
right?
did.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just like stayed in this zone.
He's good at sifting
him.
through source materials. Yes. And like,
Human darkness.
yes. Yeah. I'm looking at some of his cartoons now and they're not very good. It looks like, nope, that one's bad too. Okay. I could only find 3, but they were all really bad.
Okay. David,
Yes.
I don't know if you've heard the bad news.
What's
Stomp is closing.
Yeah, I think it closed even in the East Village.
Even worse news. I do have some good news though.
You know what replaced it is the Empire Strips Back.
Yes.
Yes.
The Star Wars themed burlesque show.
Correct. Yeah.
Anyway, bad news. Stomp is closed. Good news. Stamps is still running.
That's true because stamps,
Mm-hmm.
with so much of our world digitized or automated, why would you stick to old school mailing and shipping when you've got stamps.com that can do the hard part for you?
In fact, they're pretty different business models. Stomp's business model was bang on some trash cans to the amusement of tourists.
Sure.
Right. And Stamp's business model is save you time that you would waste in line at the post office by allowing you to print U.S. postage at home. Make shipping easy.
Look, it's a post office in your office.
Yes.
Postage rates just increased again. Stamps.com has the best discounts in the industry.
Yeah.
Amazing partnerships with USPS and UPS for unbeatable rates, up to 84% off. Plus, Stamps.com automatically tells you your cheapest and fastest shipping options.
Let's make this clear. It doesn't have to be a post office in your office.
No,
It
but
can be a post office in your bathroom. This
Right.
is the thing. Stamps.com sends you the stuff, and then it's up to you.
that's true. All you need is a computer and a printer. They send you the scale.
Yeah.
You have everything you need to get started.
You could do it on the toilet if you want to.
Okay. If
You
you, need
can.
okay. If you need a package pickup, you can schedule it through your stamps.com dashboard. And if you sell products online, they seamlessly connect with every major marketplace and shopping cart.
It's really easy. It's so easy. You could do it and do whatever you need to do in the bathroom at the same time.
Avoid the hassle and get started with stamps.com today. Sign up with promo code CHECK for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, and enter code CHECK. Okay, so let's keep it going, guys. What else is happening in Zodiac? The letters
Fincher
arrive.
said
John Terry as well.
Yeah.
I love John Terry with the
Yeah, he's so great.
glasses on his nose. This movie is obviously just like, 50-something male character actor porn. Like,
I also love that in the scene when they get the letter, you don't really have that. The only thing I can think of is like the basic version of this scene is like they read the letter and everyone's like,
Yes.
Oh my God. You know, like
God.
literally everyone's just trying to figure it out.
Day
It's
at the
like,
office.
do we know if this Vallejo story is true? And he's
Right.
like, I cover crime in Vallejo. You know, like it's
I cover. Yes.
you know, it's a bunch of newsmen doing their jobs. Like they don't really
The
grasp.
debate is more than anything, it's what page do we put this on?
Yeah, exactly.
And what do our competitors do?
Yeah, and
Right.
what are our competitors
That's
doing?
that is the
That's the
only debate
tension.
to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are still like, is this basically crankpot, shit? But they're kind of like, will we look stupid or get scooped
Right.
if we don't put it on, or if we do put it on?
The guy who brings up,
And they
is it
do what-
irresponsible to publish him, is like ignored immediately.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I've heard many tales of journalism. They do the weird sort of thing where they're like, well, we'll put it on page 4. And it's like, it's cover or not, but whatever. Fine. You split the difference. Good job, guys. And then Robert Downey Jr. as Paul Avery, you immediately get the generational divide thing.
Mhm.
Like all these guys in their white collar shirts.
Right.
Oh yes, and he's
And-
wearing that beautiful vest.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
only guy who's like influenced by Haight Ashbury.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
clearly just
Yeah.
younger and a little more plugged in than
Yeah.
these guys, which is fine. I mean, these would be guys who were born like pre-World War I. These, 50-something newspaper editors.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Like
like,
at the Chronicle.
I think the Fincher take method bearing out. Like Downey Jr. could do this in his sleep, even at
Yeah.
this point in his career where he really has something.
No, but
to
he
prove.
absolutely could.
But
yeah.
the magic of Downey Jr. is that it almost always seems like he's doing it in his sleep.
Totally
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But like, there's something about not using his hottest take
yeah.
and using the take
Yeah.
where he's a little burnt out and he almost is like doesn't have the energy to like throw the asides out to the room.
Right.
He's kind of like throwing them away as he walks
Like
away.
there is something performative about Paul Avery,
Yes.
and I think that's kind of what you're getting at, But you're right. He doesn't pick the takes where he's performative.
No, and no one else reacts to it
Yeah.
with anything other than frustration that he's doing his bits, his routine.
Really quickly, I love the little shot of when it's before they get the letter, when Graysmith walks by Paul Avery's desk and there's a bunch of people around him and they're all talking, and you immediately get this little moment of like, oh, this guy's a nerd, nobody likes him.
Yes.
Like-
I think it's also, again, a simplified version of this movie. Graysmith sees the code,
Mhm.
works on it, and cracks it.
Right. You'd cut out.
Instead, he's just interested in it.
Yeah.
And no one even notices or cares except for Avery. And Avery isn't like, what do you got?
Yeah.
He's just kind of like, I'm going to file away that the little nerd over
Right.
there is kind of plugged into this.
At the very least, so I can mock him about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And knew that he
Wouldn't give his
not
name.
actually reveal his name
Yeah.
in this code.
Yes.
But right, of course, who solved the code? Some very cute, God bless them, married freaks who love puzzles, out
Right.
in
Most
wherever,
versions of this
Modesto
movie
or
would go
whatever it
just
is.
consolidate it. Have him crack the first one.
And going back to the Gyllenhaal performance thing, have your hero do something heroic.
Yes.
Have him solve the first puzzle,
Yeah.
which he doesn't do.
No. And instead, he's going to circle around this movie kind of unnecessarily for half of
Like
it.
a lost dog.
Yeah.
Which is Fincher's line about him, where like, unsurprisingly, Fincher liked Donnie Darko.
Yeah.
And was like, I'd sort of pegged him for a while. And he had the balance of being this sort of like wide-eyed kid and also playing obsessive really well,
Yeah.
which you need both in this
Yeah.
part.
I guess when I'm seeing this movie, I love Robert Downey Jr. to death, and I've seen Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and I'm
Mhm.
kind of all in on like,
The Renaissance.
he's back.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's the thing that the three of those guys. I mean, that's
but
the
that's-
thing. It's like it was such. That's why it not hitting feels so weird, because it's like
they were all about
three of
to
them
be huge.
were about to be.
It was a
huge.
little bit of like past, present, future, but three guys who all deserved more than
Well,
they had at that moment.
exactly.
Ruffalo was one of
Yeah.
those guys where I had, as a little Oscar nerd, like adored him and You Can Count
Yes.
on Me.
adored him.
And then watched him be in like Wind Talkers, in The Cut, obviously I liked, but was a flop.
Well, we've talked about
You
this
know,
too. He had
and
like
then-
health problems. He
He was
bowed
supposed
out
to
of
be
a
in
bunch of big
Signs,
movies.
yeah.
And then it sort of felt like, wasn't that guy supposed to be the dude? What
But
happened
then
to
he
him?
had Eternal Sunshine and Collateral, where you're like, oh, well, he's supporting but interesting in those.
Yeah.
Then he did Just Like Having, rumor has it, and you're like, he looks like he has guns trained on him at all times.
Yes.
Poor guy. And so, but like still with Ruffalo, you were like, I'm not letting go of Ruffalo. Like that's someone.
But the main two reasons he was cast in this movie, I know we're getting a little ahead of his character,
Yeah,
right?
whatever.
One, Fincher really liked him in Collateral.
He's
And
great
was
in
like,
Collateral.
he
and
kind of seems more like a normal person in that movie than any other character.
well, it also, he just seems like someone who clearly talked to cops and was like,
Yes.
cops act this way. Cause he's sort of,
but he's also not playing it like a movie cop.
no, but he's, he's got the goatee
Yeah.
and like the slick back hair and like, yeah. But yeah.
Look aside, right?
Right.
And he was like, I pitched him, and the studio was like, Ruffalo does not look like a cop, sound like a cop, move like a cop. And he's like, that's kind of what you want in this part.
Right.
Which is, I think, is the genius of the casting. You need to hire an actor to play the guy that other actors are riffing on when they play movie cops.
That's
right.
exactly
Because
right.
that's, of course,
He has
who
to play
was,
the boring version of a movie star cop, the real world version. But the other thing is, I assume just because of his closeness with Pitt, he said he asked Jennifer Aniston, who are your favorite actors?
And she said Gyllenhaal and
Ruffalo.
Ruffalo.
Right, 'cause
Who are the
she'd done
guys
Good
you've
Girl
worked with that you think are really good? I got a
Gyllenhaal.
bunch of dudes to cast in this movie.
Yeah.
And she did Rumor Has It with Ruffalo.
So rumor has it kind of helps him get this.
Wow, thank you,
For
Ryan.
how much it's a mailman performance.
And like I was so in on, I think I've talked about this before, Gyllenhaal, because of seeing him on stage in This Is Our Youth in the West End.
oh, sure.
Which was one of those things where it was with Hayden Christensen and Anna Paquin.
Which Ruffalo was originally in.
He was.
Yeah.
He sure was. He was the
The first
Gyllenhaal, right?
Yeah, he was Warren, yeah.
And that was one of those performances where we were all kind of there for Christensen and Paquin.
Mhm.
And we were like, oh yeah, and like the October Sky Kid's in it.
Right.
And then you watch it and you were like, Jesus, that kid is like so fucking sensitive and interesting. And like, and then Donnie Darko came out like around then. And we were definitely like, he is going to be like, you know, whatever, the big star of the next group of kids.
The moment where we are in the movie too, or I think we're about to get to, is sort of the moment where I fall in love with Graysmith, which is, you know, when he's trying to remember The Most Dangerous Game, you know, like where he gets sort of stuck on something.
Right.
And I think just as somebody, for me personally, that was when I really, I was like, I relate with that.
Yes.
I absolutely relate with
much. And he's like ruffling papers.
And like just not being able, and then
he doesn't rember until 4 scenes later. That's what I love.
Yeah.
Like,
and then he runs off. I mean, we have to talk about Lake Berryessa, but like he runs off and he comes back. Like, you know, there is a type of person that will get something into their head and it will just jump around in there and be in there until it comes out. And he nails it. He just absolutely nails how like sad that is, but also how invigorating it is for the person it's happening to.
The other thing I love that I think he nails early on that helps sort of pin him when he's going to float around the movie for the first hour or so is like his hyper literal processing of things.
Yes. Yeah.
Where there's like someone makes the quip of like, what are you, some kind of Boy Scout? And he goes like, Eagle Scout.
Eagle Scout. That's later.
And he doesn't even treat it as like this is an important correction. He's just like,
oh yeah, of course.
Right.
What do you mean? I was an Eagle Scout.
Or
And
they're
do
like,
you smoke?
Yes.
Yeah.
One time in high school.
Yeah.
An incredible line.
Yeah.
Says that.
He
Makes me laugh
improv'd
so
that.
hard. That is such a fucking funny line. One other thing early on that I really want to note is that Fincher, God bless him, shows us they had them taking a picture of the codex
Oh God.
because he's like,
It's so sexy.
hey man, back in the day, this is what you had to do. Go take it down to the studio and we're going to line it up and we're going to put it under the big, and we're going to, you know, because I almost in the movie, I'm like, how is everyone even getting a copy of it? You know what I mean? We're now, whatever. We're so used to just like, yeah, you can take a picture of it. Well, you know, iPhone, iPad, I don't know anymore. Anyway, all right. So when is the Lake Berryessa? Yeah, that's right after. Yeah, here we are. Yeah.
And they actually went there to shoot it.
Yes, they did.
Another reason this movie costs a lot is Fincher was like, we're going to each of the real places.
Right.
And they were like, pick one side of California.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was like, North and South are different.
They're different.
If the cities exist, we're going to those cities for those departments and those precincts
Right,
and those
but then he's like, we're going to shoot in San Francisco. And San Francisco's like, you're not shooting a Zodiac movie here.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, guess I have to recreate it using fabulous digital technology then. And the studio's like, God, that's also expensive.
God damn it.
My favorite thing about Lake Berryessa, which I assume no one's ever been to, including me, is that it has a gigantic artificial hole in it.
Oh, wow.
To deal with like sluicing. And it looks like a portal to hell.
Wait, to deal with what?
Like sluicing the water out if it overflows or something. I don't fucking,
What's the word you just used?
Sluicing.
Sluicing?
Yeah, look, leave me alone. I don't know anything about lakes.
I'm just learning a new word.
It's called a spillway. Yeah, so if there's like heavy rains, they open the spillway and they get it out, I guess.
Sluice.
And someone
sluice Sims?
Someone got shut up. Be quiet. Someone got sucked into the spillway once.
Really?
Yeah, which is unfortunate. But
it
anyway.
truly looks like a portal to hell.
Yes.
So this sequence at the lake, much like the Lover's Lane sequence is scary obviously.
Yes.
But that's more like you're like, yeah, he shot them.
Hurdy-gurdy man's playing.
Yes.
It's like there's
It's
a
nighttime.
Yeah, there's something almost like kind of I would venture to say entertaining about that particular
it's a little
sequence.
more what you would imagine from a Fincher serial
There's
killer.
the frightening details, such as like he randomly walked right back and shot them another couple times in the phone call.
Yeah.
But like the Lake Berryessa sequence is so weird.
Yes.
And no one would ever make anything look like this except that this is how this happened, which only makes it scary.
This is the first scene where I go, oh, I think I'm watching a masterpiece.
Right.
Like this is the moment in the
absolutely.
theater where I go, this just leveled up.
When he stabs
the guy
Tell James.
first.
The
right?
sound.
Yes.
when she turns over, I almost screamed in the theater.
Yeah.
Like, and I've never screamed at a scary movie. Like, and I was
right.
I could feel it coming up in my throat of just like I might start screaming. I've never been so terrified.
There's something about the dullness of the sound of the knife going in
Oh my
where you're
God.
like, well, of course, right. It just sounds like a butcher working.
Yeah.
And you're like, I've never seen a movie where this isn't accentuated by.
It doesn't sound like a knife going
there's
into
no
a melon
score,
or whatever.
There's no
Right.
like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
It's just so pedestrian.
So you're just hearing like nature sounds and this sort of like.
and the
and
weird conversation too. And because like
that's what's weird too. It's like he has a gun. Why doesn't he just shoot them? He stands there weirdly for a while. He's in this getup.
I escaped from
Right.
jail. I'm taking your car. It's motiveless. He doesn't have a connection to these two. Like
He designed a supervillain costume for himself. He never used it again.
No.
Yeah.
Shit like that where you're like, why'd he do that?
That shot, like that sort of like Western shot of his belt where you see
The-
like
the
his like
ropes,
utility
yeah.
belt
Oh,
of all his
God.
different things.
it's absolutely bizarre
Yeah.
and bizarre in only the way that like real life could be bizarre.
And even just the fact that they see him without the mask, he's coming, he turns
Yeah.
back around behind the tree, then puts the rest of his costume on.
Then comes back out. I mean,
Right.
you're just like this fucking loser. Do you know what I mean? Like is about
he's kind of a loser.
to commit this heinous, bizarre act of violence against these two unsuspecting people. And
Yes, the Fincher thing he says about this movie so much is like, I wanted to make a movie that serial killers couldn't masturbate to.
right. Yes. Yeah.
The challenge was, can you make something that somehow doesn't glamorize them at all?
It is really the anti-Seven.
It makes them seem so dorky.
It's like you have no plan, bro.
Yes.
Like it's not like this artful like and I'm making art projects out of my victims and I'm following this like 7 deadly sin. It's like the opposite of that. It's like I am randomly
yes.
shooting people for no reason except that I want to be famous.
And part of what's so scary and upsetting is like the clumsiness of
Oh
it.
God.
And that he's using such extreme technical precision and like using CGI to augment replicating things in the least cinematic way, in the way that makes them feel kind of dull and meaningless. That's more upsetting.
I think what he taps into in that scene is that in the back of your mind, not when you're watching the movie, but when you're just walking around it in life, way in the back of your mind is that little fight or flight, like somebody could hurt me. You know, I'm just walking to the subway, someone could hurt me. There's no stimuli for it. It's just way in the back there. And that whatever that little part of your brain is, gets so hyper activated watching
Yes.
this movie that I was aware of it for weeks afterward. Like for weeks, I was just like, someone is going to jump out of nowhere and stab me for no reason.
Especially because the victim is talking through all of these excuses.
Right. He keeps
he
saying
lists off like
things.
probably 6 different things, which is
I could
something
write
you
a
would
check.
do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Well,
can
I'm not
help
even saying
you.
him trying to get out of it. I'm saying even like she's like, that guy's kind of weird. It's a public place.
Yeah, well, that part first, right? The build up, right? But there's just something frightening about how he then keeps trying to be like, I'll give you my money.
Yeah.
I could write you a check. I could probably help you out. And the guy's just saying nothing to him.
It's shot
Right.
perfectly. You
Yes.
have no like matching coverage. Like everything is from the victim's POV all the way up to that extreme close up of, was that gun even loaded?
And he shows him the
And he
bullets,
shows him
yeah.
oh my God, it's just like absolutely bone chilling to this day.
Thing about it being, I mean, when he is being stabbed in the back,
Mm.
right? And you cut to the shot of her just kind of watching it
Yeah.
so close to his face, looking at his reaction while she hears this sound. And then when it finally cuts out to the wide shot and she turns over,
Oh,
that moment
God.
you're talking about, the fact that the blood is digital.
Yeah.
And for him, it's like, I don't want to have to deal with resets and costume changes and all of that.
All of the
I
violence.
still
is
think
digitally
most
done.
digital blood looks fake, and
Yeah.
somehow this still looks better than anything else.
Just knows what he's
15
doing.
years earlier.
Yeah. I don't
But
know how he did it.
It's when she turns over and you're watching new wounds be created, but also the old wounds are growing and expanding. And
Yeah.
you're like, this is actually what it looks like.
Yeah.
I'm used to seeing squibs in a way that is like, I accept this
Yes.
is the
Oh, yeah.
language of it.
Yeah.
But I feel like for the first time, I'm watching what would actually happen if you're 3 inches away from someone being stabbed to death, which is the most upsetting shit in the world.
Yeah. You're really kind of in Brian. What's his last name? Hartnell, the victim?
Brian.
You're like,
Hartnell.
you're,
Brian,
you're
yes.
watching his POV
Yeah.
of her, like, because he's
They're
on that
right
side of
next to
her.
each other.
It's almost as if he turned and that shot is what he's seeing.
Yes.
And it's just like the ultimate powerlessness.
They're fucking hogtied.
Oof.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, again, I'm like shaking right now talking about it.
So then we should be right. Like, I do think it's then reason this movie works. We're cutting back to newspapers, and it is such a relief.
You're
Yes.
just so glad.
And
You're so
Avery is
relieved.
such a relief. Now, because
Yeah.
Graysmith's a little freak, and he's immediately drawing a picture of the Zodiac in his weird bag costume.
Mhm.
And Avery has the perfect, like, you know, where he's like, what is he doing out of Vallejo? Sweet Jesus, what are you drawing? Like,
Yes.
and like, I love the combo of them, because Avery is like, I'm a crime reporter. Like, I know how to do this.
Mhm.
Like, yes, this is going to be the case that defines his career.
Yeah.
But he's like, I know how to write about this.
Yeah.
And then Graysmith is like the shadow on the horizon of like, you don't understand the freakish obsession with this kind of stuff that's dawning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, as we enter this like tragic American age, right? As the 60s end
Mhm.
and fucking, you know, the nasty 70s arrive and all that. And Graysmith is like, I'm just compelled by this. Right?
Yes.
Great. I mean, like, that's why this movie's so fucking influential to this day, because I don't know if you've heard about this, but a lot of people are really interested in true crime to this day in this kind of obsessive way.
It is the part of the movie where you're like, Social Network, you can give him credit for, like, you can kind of see where things are going. And
Yes.
that movie seemed
Yeah.
to predict a lot of things correctly or have
Yeah.
a good, clear vision of where we were heading. But like, no one making this film could have anticipated
No.
that like Reddit would become
Right.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
basically a million Robert Graysmiths interfacing with each other and all being like, I'm the one person who can solve this, despite
right.
not having the qualifications.
So
Yeah.
right after all that, bird's eye view shot of a cab going through San Francisco, turning, camera's like fixed on the cab, and then we see the cab murder. Like, that's 25 minutes into the movie. We're done with Zodiac killings.
Yeah.
There's one more sequence with Ione Skye, you know, which is not a murder.
the Kathleen Johns.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
But that's it.
Yes.
Then we have 2+ hours of movie left.
Right. And it's only after this sequence that you finally introduce
Meet the cops,
Yeah.
because there's a San Francisco crime that went down.
Yeah. But that car shot is another one where you're like, why did
What
that
is
just
this? Why does it look
unnerve
like
me
Grand
so
Theft
much?
Yeah.
Auto 1?
And he's just like, it is a shot that is technically impossible.
Yes.
Right? To have this bird's eye view that like hairpin turns
The way the
perfectly.
camera
Perfectly.
turns,
It's
yes.
again, it's
Right.
it's like that dolly shot at the beginning. Like
Yes.
it's like this can't exist.
But it's also not like stupid Zemeckis mocap impossible flying camera shit.
No.
It's like he's treating it like there is a real camera there, but then training it to do a thing that it wouldn't actually do.
Yeah, we talk about this in working on Star Wars that like when you go into space and you're shooting the ships,
Mhm.
it's like there's definitely this feeling of like when the VFX people turn it in that they want to kind of give you a sense that there's a cameraman.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, there's no cameraman in space. You know what I mean? Like the camera should be almost documentary style. Like it only can pan and move
Right.
in this way that George wanted to do his like cycling documentary or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
it
yeah.
was. You know, like there's no shaky like, oh, I didn't realize that was coming.
Right,
You know,
right.
like you
faked
know,
mistakes.
the faked mistakes or like
Right.
any of those things. And I think like Fincher is always doing that. It's not the camera can go anywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
it can, and it can defy certain rules, but only the rules that that would tell the story in the best way.
Well, it's like a visual omniscient narrator.
Yes. Yeah.
Where it's like, it knows the exact move to make at the exact right time.
Yeah. It's like, oh, the cab's moving. Boom.
Yeah.
Like,
Just to be clear, yes, Star Wars doesn't have that, but it does have a Toschi station.
It does.
Just named after Dave Toschi.
Of course.
And Luke wants to go there to pick up some power converters.
Yeah.
And he never gets them.
He never gets them.
But soon, of course, Disney Plus will have a new show in which Luke got the power converters.
Yes.
Right. It'll be 10 episodes of him going back to get them.
Yes, absolutely.
That would be good.
Absolutely.
Fill in some gaps,
No,
please.
that's like, I want like the workplace sort of like auto parts sitcom.
Toschi?
Yeah.
The introduction of Mark Ruffalo as Dave Toschi, I do love the line about where he's like, you owe me a new lamp. I'm going to like describe this lamp to you. June Diane Raphael, her first film appearance. I always forget she's in this.
Yeah.
It was her first, I didn't know it was her first film.
Yeah. I mean, I get why he cast her though, because June Diane Raphael does look like someone from a different time. Like she looks like a 60s gal in a way, you know, like you just give her a hairstyle.
I love that they never say her name.
Yeah, they don't. Carol Toschi.
I got it.
But and then I mean, we haven't mentioned him yet.
Anthony Edwards.
You know, Jesus among us, the greatest man who ever lived, Dr. Green.
I don't remember what profile it was. I guess it must have been some piece when he was making this movie, but I just remember reading a description of Fincher behind the monitor, watching Anthony Edwards work. And like going like, that's an actor.
Yeah.
Like yelling to the crew. He's like, look at that. Every fucking take is different.
He seems so Fincherian.
Yeah.
Whatever that
Fincher
is.
just seemed happier with him than
he loved him.
He's so
any
good
other
in this
actor he's
movie.
ever worked with.
He's so good in this movie.
So good.
Because he never wants to steal a scene, right? Like, you know, because he truly feels consummate, you know, the guy that he's playing.
But also he's like, this movie can only exist because of how thorough this guy's notes were, right? So he's like, this guy's the secret hero of the movie.
That's exactly right.
And the tragedy of the film, the thing that makes the film so kind of bleak, is that halfway through, he's like, I shouldn't be in this movie
I can't
anymore.
do this anymore. Right.
This is going in a bad direction.
But like you immediately understand, they're in the car together. Toschi's obviously this like interesting odd guy. And there's fucking, you know, what's his name? Armstrong. And, you know, Toschi's like, do you have any? He's like, crackers, you know, handing him the crackers. Like they're this unit.
Throws him a reclosable snack sack.
The way this scene looks, like the low light, like this is where the digital is like a triumphant
An
thing,
absolute triumph, yeah.
right? Like the fact that there's so much clarity, but it's like the middle of the fucking night.
Right. And this is the sequence that's like entirely built in CGI.
And it doesn't seem like there are floodlights everywhere or whatever you would have to do normally.
And Fincher so rarely does handheld.
Exactly. I was going to say.
You almost feel like he's doing it to ground the sequence around the fact that he's building a fake environment.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I think that's actually so right on, because he doesn't do, like you said, he doesn't do handheld unless it's, you know, deeply, deeply called for. And I think it is because he's trying not to mask the digitalness of it, but it's almost like a flex, because then you have to go shoot like the plates for all of that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. It just seems wild to me that the scene should not look as good as it does.
No.
And it's absolutely stunning.
It's perfect. As you said, their dynamic of just like this very casual,
where they're
like,
doing the back and
working
forth,
it through.
like, well, then why does he go to the front? You know, like where you're
I'm an
sort of
idiot.
like,
right.
this
but you're
feels-
not an idiot.
But you're
I
not
love
an
that.
idiot. You have the-
You're
but like,
cheating.
where you're like,
it's too easy to think this guy's an idiot.
Punchy,
Yes.
in a way, but you're like, I guess this is sort of the building blocks of them just trying to figure out basic motivations.
Once again,
right.
it's this thing, I don't understand how this movie depicts this well.
It's so
but
good.
I'm like, you are showing us the real versions of the people who usually get turned into movie characters.
That's right.
And I feel like I'm watching, like, well, this is the documentary on who the guy who the movie character was based on. And yet I'm still watching movie stars play out scripted scenes.
Right. I mean, obviously, this is why The Wire had felt so revolutionary, which is around the same time. Things like that, where it's like, this is like boring and methodical and hunchy in a way that feels like we expect more of a Sherlock Holmes, like, the handle, you know, it clearly this killer was 5'10" or whatever. Where
Anyone
you're like,
else turns
like,
their banter of talking through the crime into like a superpower.
That's exactly right. Yes. And instead what you get is just competency.
And process.
You know, and process. And just like, okay, these guys are competent. They're going through the process. This is not the first shot cabbie that they've dealt with before.
Yeah.
And we, with the dramatic irony of knowing who's done this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like we're the ones that are like, oh man, they have no idea what they're about to step in.
Here's the other thing with this
the
movie.
next scene is the letter.
Yeah.
It's like them at the newspaper.
We just went from, routine cabbie shooting to mass murderer targets kids. Like it's almost this beautiful little dance that you get to watch with them and see who they were before they get destroyed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing with this movie is like one of the scariest clouds hanging over it is just time, right?
Yeah.
That we know the movie we bought a ticket to.
Yeah.
And we're like, this stretches on forever. I don't know how they're going to end this movie, but I know in real life we never got clear answers. And so when like minute 4 of the movie, we're jumping like 4 days later, 2 weeks later, you're like, this film is going fast.
That's the other thing I love about the little chirons
Yes.
is that is that they denote time not as like, I mean, sometimes it'll be like 1977 or whatever,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, but they'll be like this much time later.
Little increments.
Like here's here's the next increment of time that has gone by.
Because the movie is being methodical, but it's also like time is getting skipped over.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of fill in the blanks every time there's one of those and go like, so then for 2 weeks, nothing happened.
Right.
Yeah.
For
You
2 weeks,
feel
they
it's
all
slipping away
went
from
about
them.
their day.
But you're like, they're losing it. Like,
Right.
whatever immediacy there is to this, like it's going to leave them.
Right.
Like the longer it takes. And
Yes.
but they're immediately distracted by like, oh, he says he's going to shoot kids in school buses.
Right.
Now we have to deal with that. Like then later
Yes.
he's going to make a bomb. Now we have to figure out if that's real. Like if he can do that.
There
Like,
were 2 things that hit very differently for me watching this movie again for the first time in maybe a couple years. I don't know if I've watched it since 2020. Like one is obviously just the rise of true crime and amateur online
Sleuthing.
murder solvers, right? And these people who show up unannounced at victims' families' doors and want to grill them about.
A particular obsession with serial killers.
Yes, correct.
Really, really like.
Correct. Right. But this sort of like citizen Crime Stopper shit. And then the other part of it is like the pandemic and just being like living in a world with like several years of this invisible threat hanging over us. And it sort of like waxes and wanes, right?
Yeah.
And this feeling of being like, cases are down. Maybe we're getting out of this. And you're like, surge, new variant, whatever. This feeling of like, anytime they cut ahead whatever amount of time, you're like, okay, that was a period of time where there wasn't another killing or there wasn't a new discovery.
Or there wasn't a letter.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
And even still, it's like things are a little calmer, but also it's not resolved. People are still wondering at any moment, am I going to get the bad news?
Yeah.
And in this day and age, you're not getting it on your phone. You're waking up the next morning in the newspaper and finding out something horrible happened last night.
But what I like to think about rewatching this movie is that half an hour into the movie, all the murders have been depicted and basically all the letters have come in apart from the later crackpot ones. Not that the earlier ones weren't crackpot. And you're like, oh, 99% of the evidence is now available to us. And the rest of this movie is them going back to it.
And none of it fits
Over
together
and over
perfectly.
Yeah.
Like so much of what Graysmith did was just open up the fucking files from like 1966 again.
Yes.
Now it's when like if Anthony Edwards, if Armstrong and Toschi are on it, okay, call, Elias Codius, over in Vallejo, call Donald Logue, in where's Napa, right? He's in Napa.
He's in Napa. He's Berryessa. Yeah.
And they're all like, by the way, why the fuck haven't you sent us this? And we're sorry.
we
it's like
really
so
should have
much
been
of
in on the
that.
handwriting.
Right. You have Philip Baker Hall, who's phenomenal.
The opening credits of this movie, when you go,
I know it's
like, the
pornographic.
3
like I
cards.
said,
It's
yes.
it is, and it's like the Vince McMahon.
Just you
meme.
wait, this guy too,
Right.
him too. Are you
Right.
kidding me?
Because it's the staggered like towering inferno,
Yeah.
Gyllenhaal, Ruffalo.
We haven't
Downey
even gotten
Jr.
to Brian Cox.
I know.
No, we'll
Like-
get to him.
Well, then
He's
it's
coming
Edward
up.
Cox as a split card, and you're like, that's good.
Nice.
And then it
nice.
gives you a series of 3 cards that are Vince McMahon meme.
Yeah, right.
Like I'm
right.
forgetting what the permutations are,
I
but
mean,
every one
I can
hits.
probably find them for you. Philip Baker Hall, I think, so well cast because he's doing something that is, and I apologize to handwriting analysis, but pseudoscience.
Yeah.
And he's just Philip Baker Hall, so you're like, well, he has to be right.
Yes.
He's like, oh, the K's here, and you're like, hey, the fucking K's, he knows.
Right.
And like a lot of this like boils down to some people like with the handwriting, and it's like, well, we don't like. Is that actually definitive?
At the end of the
And
day,
it's
all
like,
these things are like opinions.
right.
It's that
Yeah.
Ruffalo line where like
No, I get the Ruffalo
Gyllenhaal
line
thinks
of like,
he's figured it all out, and he's like all circumstantial.
right. I
Yeah.
love the Ruffalo line of like in court. Yes, this cannot
Right.
be enough. Right. Yeah, but we're right. That's different from we definitely know who did or
But
didn't.
so
All
many
right.
times in this movie, you're like, all of this fits together, and then you go to Philip Baker Hall, and it's the K,
Right,
and you're
yeah.
back to square one. And you either go, I discredit this guy, or I discredit my conclusion.
Charles Fleischer, Zach Grenier, Philip Baker Hall. That's the first three. Okay. So Roger Rabbit, Zach Grenier, who's the
best.
A plus Fincher freak.
Yeah.
Although in this one, he's playing a fairly normal guy. Usually, if you bring him in to play a freak. Elias Koteas, James LaGrosse, Donald Logue.
I mean, come on.
Three. I mean, I love James LaGrosse. I think that guy is the best.
Yeah.
He barely in. John Carroll Lynch, Dermot Mulroney, Chloe Sevigny. You're like, whoa, they allowed a woman to be in this movie? Are we sure? But no, I mean, another three amazing.
Yeah.
We should talk about Chloe, but like she just has the look. That's it. Oh, wow. And then casting by Lorraine Mayfield, the legend. But there's a million other fucking Adam Goldberg for one scene, or
Jimmy Simpson for one scene.
John Ennis,
like we said, Getz
from Mr. Show, as the rival handwriting
expert. Clea Duvall.
That's John Ennis.
That's John Ennis.
Yeah,
the Clea Duvall is
fantastic.
really good in that one scene, where Grace Smith is basically just like, say that name, and she's like, no,
it was Rick.
Yeah.
Well, and what's the first thing, jumping way ahead, what's the first thing she says to him when he walks in?
You got the look.
And he goes, what look? And she just goes, never mind, just do your fucking thing.
Yeah,
do your thing.
Whatever. I've met with you guys a bunch.
Right.
All right. Now, we don't need to go quite as scene by scene at this point, but, most of the first chunk of the film is, Ruffalo and Edwards.
Yes.
At this point, Avery is, important, but, the cops kind of take over for a bit.
Their side.
And Gyllenhaal is still just kind of circling around. Then we have the whole Brian Cox sequence.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not skipping
Melvin Belly.
Yes.
Who was basically like he was sort of like a Johnny Cochran of the day, right? Like a famous attorney.
What was he was the one who got what's his name? Jack Ruby acquitted, who shot Lee Harvey Oswald.
Well, Jack Ruby died in prison. I'm not sure.
He
was the
represented
attorney
him.
for
Yes,
Jack
I'm sorry.
Ruby.
Yes.
He also was famously in a Star Trek as a character called Gorgon, which they mention in the guy being, I saw your Trek, and he's like, I should probably just be an actor. Yeah. He's
but
so
the Jack
fucking
Ruby
funny.
thing's important of why the Zodiac would want to talk to
He's
him.
the kind of celebrity lawyer to the criminal stars.
And I got to call out the coverage there of him whenever he's talking and he's just looking like essentially straight into the camera.
Silence the Lambs cam.
It's so good.
Yes.
It's so good. Take care of yourself, Sam. Like it just, I don't know why he chose to do that, but the eeriness of feeling personally implicated by the call.
He does it in the first Arthur Lee Allen interrogation scene as well.
Yes,
where Fincher
he does.
switches from being like outside the conversation, over the shoulder, to being like directly inside it.
Like Jonathan
you are
Demme.
the other side of this.
Yeah.
And it does feel like it is when people know they are somewhat cornered, or at least directly engaged.
Yeah.
You're sort of like in the crosshairs.
You know what it might be is that even though it's a misdirect, it's like when you're talking to Zodiac, then you get to look right into the camera.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's so whether
it sounds like you're in a great deal of pain. Yeah. Yeah.
That was my headache.
Do you know that he wanted Gary Oldman to do this?
I mean, he wanted Gary Oldman to do everything.
He always wants Gary Oldman in, but he put him in a bunch of prosthetics and was like, this looks silly. We should just hire
Brian Cox.
Yeah.
And Gary Oldman is like, and I'll never wear prosthetics again.
Never.
Certainly never to play a world leader.
Never to plump up.
And Cox looks perfect. The big mane of hair, the thick tie, the tie as thick as his neck, the tie knot.
Oh, it's so good.
And that sequence, I think, is so crucial. One, because Cox is such a hilarious showman.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the only character who thinks he's in a movie.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Who's like, I'm acting out this scene for the ultimate film made
We're
about
watching
this event.
total bullshit, like useless. Some crazy guy called in and was like, I'm crazy, and everyone was
Yelling about
hanging
his
on every
headaches.
word because it's such good television
Terrifying.
and it's such good movie watching. Like,
in the same way that the letters are good news, like the whole thing becomes this like red herring of nonsense.
The whole thing with the fucking codex, what do you call them? The puzzle letters, is it's like the great mystery of like there's two unsolved. And then one of them gets solved and it's like more nonsense.
Yeah.
More just like, I hope you saw me on the TV. I'm going to shoot some little kid. It's just more like crap.
Well, also,
it's not him being like, by the way, 395 Main Street, like look me up.
Fincher and Graysmith both
I'm Arthur
obviously.
Lee Allen. I got the name from The Watch. All right, see you later. Confirmed.
Fincher and Graysmith, I think, both personally lean towards Arthur Lee Allen, right?
Definitely.
It is apparent.
It's obviously
Yes.
the most obvious candidate.
Right.
And I think Fincher is very convinced by Toksky being like, that's the one guy where I was like, the minute he walked in, I was like, I like this guy for it. Like,
But even that language is
Right.
what's so fascinating.
Yeah.
There's the later part where Gyllenhaal finally gets through to Donald Logue and he
Donald
mentions
Logue
Mark
likes
Arthur.
the other guy.
Right.
Rick Marshall.
Rick Marshall, sorry. And he
Where he's
says,
like, you just named my favorite.
he says,
Right.
potentially, you're talking about my favorite suspect.
Right, where it's like
And he-
Tosky's like, I'm a born to run guy, and Donald Logue's like, I'm
talking
a Nebraska guy myself.
My
Like,
analogy I thought of, not to like throw out like a Simsian metaphor, I was like, they're talking about it like it's starter Pokemon.
Right, yeah. I
You have
always
to
go
start with Bulbasaur.
Yeah, definitely. Which
Right.
I am a
And there's this
Bulbasaur guy.
weird degree to which, like, in the second half of this movie, where Gyllenhaal is basically going back to all these guys that he's been kept from
Yeah.
and going like, I'm now the guy who's really into Zodiac. And all of them are like, I dated her. I don't want to go back.
Yeah. I
don't wanna
did
go back there.
6 years on that treadmill, baby. I don't want to do it again.
And then all of them like get caught up in the thing again.
Yeah.
Where it's like there's this weird like sport to it for them.
Yeah.
Of like, it's fun to have your guy and think you can make it fit.
So it's like I can't allow you to help. I especially can't tell you to go talk to Ken Narlow in
Yes.
Napa. Narlow. Like it's just like you can see.
There's three ways to go about it. Get a warrant, which you won't,
Yeah.
or get creative. Right.
I mean, they're encouraging him in this way that betrays their own obsession
Yes.
with the case.
But the thing I was going to say is that it would be very easy for Fincher to put his thumb on the scales and say, well, the movie we're making is the movie that argues that Arthur Lee Allen links everything together the best.
Yeah.
So I'll just have John Carroll Lynch play all embodiments of the Zodiac, which he doesn't.
No.
Like sometimes it is his body in those scenes, and sometimes it is his voice, but he has multiple guys doing it at different times.
I think also I really appreciate how many red herrings he has in the second half of the movie. The Rick Marshalls, the Sherry Joe Bates, the fact that you go on again, these are like the nooks and crannies, like going into all these scenes where they're like, we just don't think this is him. And it's like, well, then why did you tell Paul Avery?
Right.
Like what, and you start to realize that like, it could be Arthur Lee Allen.
Yes.
And in a regular Hollywood movie, that's what it would be about.
And
It'd be about one guy, and you would be able to feel okay with it being that guy. But I think it's so important that the movie spends so much time on the red herrings, on the people that it probably isn't. We never see Rick Marshall. We never
see him. I know. I kept trying to find. You Google Rick Marshall, he looks like the Zodiac Killer.
Really?
I will say.
Really?
Yeah.
But it's part of what's frustrating is you're like, you almost wonder, are these not red herrings? Like, part of what's so frustrating about this reality is like, it's that scene, the Paul Avery scene, where he's like, you almost seem disappointed, where he breaks down to him. He's like, what do we actually verifiably know that this one guy did?
Yeah.
And already they've lost control of the narrative. And you're like, we basically created a template where any crazy person can stand up and do something.
Yeah.
So are all these killings connected? Are all the letters connected? Like Arthur Lee Allen might be the Zodiac Killer, but also 30% of what we ascribe to the Zodiac Killer might have been copycats.
Right.
Which is why the whole
that's
case
where it
falls
becomes
apart.
a ball of yarn that you can't. Right. We have to talk about the bar scene. Maybe the greatest line reading in
Aqua
the
Velvas.
history of Robert Downey Jr. This can no longer be ignored. Which I love that he's not immediately like, but he's like, okay. So he sent this. You think he sent the second code because he found the first one too easy. This can no longer be ignored. And then maybe the best cut in the history of movies is him trying it and then cut to 6 of them
Him
demolished.
shot through the other side of an Aqua Velva
It's
half
vodka, gin, basically like Sprite, like a
Windex.
lemon lime,
And blue
then
curacao.
blue
Yeah, blue
curacao.
Right. Which I've never liked. I don't like the taste of blue curacao.
I mean, yeah, it's not
kind of nasty.
It's kind of nasty. And
Surprised to
drinking
hear it's some real Griff shit.
Windex,
Yeah, not at all, my friend.
color is also just unpleasant.
Well, it's electric blue. Like it's not a natural color. I know it's like an orange sort of look. It's
But like not even
Natural color of
Gatorade has
Pandora.
that brightness to it.
yeah, sure. Are you
It's
a
like Windex.
Aqua Velva drinker yourself?
I don't drink.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well,
Smart.
maybe I can get you a virgin Aqua Velva.
Yeah, I
maybe,
would absolutely have a virgin
water
one.
with blue food coloring and an orange peel.
And Sprite.
It's right. Yeah.
Sugar with sugar and water.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Graysmith is going to still hang back in this movie, but in that bar scene, you do have him explaining like how to crack the code, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like you're looking for kill.
Yeah.
You're
The double L.
you're looking for the double L's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Avery, again, I feel like this is a sequence where Avery is like, I'm smart. He's not saying this, but he's like, I'm smart and I'm an investigative reporter. I know how to do this.
Mhm.
I don't have the kind of sick brain that looks at one of those squares of codes and is like, where's kill?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Gyllenhaal is like, well, it's a serial killer, so who wrote kill? So let's find where kill is.
It's another perfect Downey Jr. line delivery of how does one do that?
Right.
And that is said with such disdain.
Like clearly Downey Jr. Avery just wants to go to parties where, you know, everyone gets naked at the end of the night, right? Like on a houseboat. Like that's really what he wants to do.
Yes.
He doesn't want to solve the Zodiac murders.
Right. Then what do we have? We have, well, then it's Ione Skye. Then it's
Kathleen Johns.
Yeah.
maybe this, I mean, I don't know what you guys think. I think the scariest sequence in Zodiac is probably the basement sequence with Fleischer. I remember in the theater feeling the most afraid then.
Yes.
But this is so like sharply frightening. That,
Yeah.
you know, the way it's drawn out and then the final thing of like, I'm going to throw your baby out of the car. Like,
But this is one where,
And
like,
the-
I swear that's John Carroll Lynch's voice, right? Like, this is a scene where it feels like
Oh,
that's
I think that is him.
him.
Yeah.
yeah,
but it's
obviously-
not always him.
Well, he had
Yeah.
different people play
Right.
Zodiac in different
Bob
times.
Stevenson is him at some points, I
Right.
think.
John
Yeah.
Lacey, you know, he would cast people to match the physical description from
Of
every,
that yes.
which is cool.
It's great.
It's cool. But yeah, the Kathleen Johns thing is so scary. And it feels like a ghost story you're being told at a sleepover.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it has that feeling of like, you know, or a My Favorite Murder,
Right.
like,
Yes.
you know,
Right.
episode or something. It's just
The
absolutely.
opening to a slasher movie, you know, right.
Yeah.
I survived, you know, like it's just absolutely terrifying.
Well, and that feeling of her standing on the side of the road as the other cars come up, like that cut is terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Off
Oh,
of
it's
his
so
line
bad.
of, I'm going to throw your baby out the moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
vehicle. And then it's like, okay, you feel the relief of, you see a car pulling up, she's alive.
She's alive.
She
The
survived
baby's
somehow.
alive.
We don't
She
know
hid
how,
the baby.
but her hands are covered in blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's the baby?
Where's the baby?
And you're so terrified you're going to hear something awful happen to the baby.
yeah.
And there's something more upsetting, although there is a relief, obviously,
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
of there being like, you hid the baby on the side of the road.
Right.
She's like, I thought he was going to come back.
Oh my God.
And then you get to Avery taking Graysmith to the basement and being like, my theory is that might not have been Zodiac.
Yeah.
And my theory is this one wasn't either because he only wrote the letters that we got after the crime.
You almost look disappointed, which is already all these guys are starting to have an unhealthy relationship.
You guys may know this. I forget the trivia here. The coffee guy at the Chronicle with the
Mhm.
glasses. Who is that? That obviously was a real guy, right?
But who's the actor?
Yeah. Is that like the real guy or something? I just love that he keeps popping up and he has
Oh, I don't know.
the mean lines or whatever. He's really cool.
Yeah.
And then what do we got? You know, then Avery getting the bloody
the bloody shirt.
shirt
Yeah.
and freaking out. And
Yes.
you're kind of like, that's about an hour plus into the movie. And you're like, oh, he's lost. Like,
Yeah.
that's when he gets the gun.
Dave, I want a gun. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's also now getting really into being like one of the
Mr.
main
Zodiac.
characters of this narrative.
He goes to you know, that's where Graysmith goes on the first date with Chloe Sevigny and is like, yeah, he's going to Riverside or something. I forget what that is. And she's like, it's like near LA. And he's like, oh, I don't think he knows it's that far away. And she's like, uh-huh. And he's like, I guess I should call him. And like, there's no cell phones.
Her line reading of like, is this some skeezy ploy to get me back to your house?
I love that. And he's clearly like, huh? Like it's
And
like,
his answer
you're
is
like, this man
truly
has somehow
so
had
guileless.
children, but he's
Yeah.
never fucked. I don't,
Yeah.
you know, like,
He reproduced
someone tricked
asexually.
him or whatever, you know.
Right.
Someone was just like, just sit there and we're gonna kiss and don't worry, it'll all work
Yeah.
itself out. And he was like, oh, okay. Like, because it's almost crazy that he has a kid
Yes.
and the others. Do they have? Does Tosky have children? Like,
Yeah. He has,
we don't see them.
Yeah.
right.
We don't see them, but he's like, I know, boss. I've got 3 daughters of my own.
Right. He does. That's
Yeah.
right.
They tell
yeah.
him at some point, like, go on vacation. Right.
Go to
Spend some time with your
Candlestick.
kids. Yeah. Go to Candlestick.
See a movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
you should fucking go to Candlestick. There's the moment where they all get on the plane, like everyone
Mhm.
from every city, right?
Yes.
You know, Zach Grenier's there, who's the
Yeah.
justice guy, and they go to Riverside. Who's that guy who plays the old cop?
He is incredible.
I love that. I mean, he's one of those guys.
He's just one of those guys, but he's incredible.
Who's basically like John Mayen is that guy.
Okay.
And he's I think he's also in LA Confidential.
Yes.
Yeah, he's in that. He's like the commissioner in that.
Yes,
he's like,
yes,
gentlemen.
yes.
And he's like, yeah. Zodiac. But like, I actually like this other guy for it. And isn't that how they get Arthur Lee Allen? Right? Like, he's the one who leads them to Arthur Lee Allen.
No, Arthur Lee Allen, they get on him because Armstrong interviews the old roommate.
Right, the guy with the glasses.
Yeah, the guy with the glasses.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like the roommate
just
of Arthur's brother, I would say.
something like that.
Something like that. And he goes fishing with him and he's like, I'm going to call myself Zodiac and I'm going to do all these things on January 1st.
Because it's that thing, it's that sequence where they're like, now we're opening up the floodgates to all the nuts. And you have that sequence of all these people they're interviewing.
The lady who's like, could be Paul Avery.
Right.
And he's like, okay, we're looking into that one. Yeah.
My ex-boyfriend used to cut people's hands off. He has to be the Zodiac. And they say he didn't cut anyone's hands off. But then there's like the 4 months later, 7 months later, whatever he is. It's like, this has been fruitless. And then the last interview is him throwing out the thing about the fishing and telling the story. And they're like, this is the first thing we've heard in months that sounds like it might be something. He leads them to that. But it's the open call, basically, that gets them to Arthur.
Audience member, you're still, especially the first time, you're still in this mode of like, yes, we're gathering evidence. I'll remember all of this.
Yeah.
And later you realize, we're being shown dead end after dead end for a reason, because that is what this became.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, then the Arthur Lee Allen scene is so well acted. One, because John Carroll Lynch is like fucking Oscar worthy in this movie.
Oh my God, he's incredible.
And two, the way that Ruffalo, Edwards, and Codius play the sort of like, holy shit, this guy's basically admitting to being a Zodiac killer.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Where he's like, no, I would never kill kids. Anyway, this is my Zodiac watch.
And the way he like crosses his leg and we see the boot.
Oh.
We see
and then
the
you
shoes.
see him see the boot.
Yeah.
You see, and then you see him see that he saw the boot. Right. It's like,
good.
And his weird like gentleness, like the weird way he talks.
And Fincher had said on the commentary that he asked him to do it one way where you just are totally innocent.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't believe they're even asking you
Too
this.
morbid. Like, that kind of
exactly.
thing.
And and Fincher said he was like, the more innocent he played it, the more he looked guilty. The more he looked like he absolutely was the Zodiac killer.
My only question, I asked this because I know you have landed on an answer for this, David.
Okay.
Do you put Ruffalo in lead or supporting? Do you have this movie with 2 supporting nominations?
I have the 3 boys are the 3 leads. I think you have to do it that way. Gyllenhaal, Ruffalo, Downey all have to just be considered leads.
Okay.
Because the supporting cast is so massive in this movie.
So then you give John Carroll Lynch the supporting nomination.
I do, but I'm willing to hear basically any argument for any performance in this movie. I think they're all good.
He and Ruffalo are the 2 I like jam on all day and all night.
I mean, Ruffalo is an incredibly rewarding actor. Like returning to a Ruffalo performance is usually really rewarding. I think.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of depth to his work. And that's why I watch Avengers Age of Ultron all the time. I had it was obvious. I had to make a joke like that. No, we have to move into the final act of the movie, which is the Gyllenhaal act, and just shout out any scenes from that we like, basically.
The Fleischer scene.
Yes. But like, and the diner scene and the Fleischer scene, the I walked it scene and the Fleischer scene are the sort of crucial.
And the Paul the Avery boat scene.
Yeah, as the coda for Avery. As we said, he's haunting the movie at that point.
He's haunting the movie at that point. He's very the dude.
He is.
That scene as well.
Is he naked? Do you think he's kind of like balls out and we're sort of not seeing that?
Yes,
right.
So. Absolutely.
There's that one a quick cutaway to him watching the news at the bar.
Yes.
With the emphysema tank still smoking.
Yes. And where
so
he's
good.
The library line or whatever is there. Right. Yes. Okay.
I think that the Gyllenhaal part, what I love about it is that he goes down the Rick Marshall rabbit hole.
Yes.
Like I just love and that the culmination is the Charles Fleischer scene. Like like the culmination of that is that I'm in a dark cellar.
Yes.
But like what
in
I
the
love
middle
about
of
that
nowhere.
scene is nothing might be happening.
No, Fincher is using full Hitchcock to do a scene that is entirely
this
subjective
might just be a
and in
weird
his
guy.
head.
Yeah.
It's this guy's paranoia has become so out of control that he thinks he's in a horror movie all the time.
He's definitely a weird guy.
Well,
he's
he's
a
a weird
silent
guy.
film projectionist, and he saved all of his records from fucking 30 years ago.
But like when Gyllenhaal is like, door's locked, and you're like, oh my God. And like Fleischer's reaction is kind of like, yeah, that's okay. I got it.
Yeah.
And you're like, is he enjoying that he made him feel bad, or is he just kind of realizing that this guy is freaking out because he thinks about the Zodiac?
Any man wearing a toupee that obvious is a fucking freak.
Yes, but yes, we need to start wrapping up Griffin. So is there anything else we have to talk about with the Zodiac movie?
Well, Clea Duvall brings him back to Arthur Lee Allen after basically spending years in like cul-de-sacs.
Right, because she's the one who's like, the name Lee is who I remember of this weirdo at this party.
He's begging her to connect his previous theories. But Chloe Sevigny has that like heartbreaking final line.
And he has the birthday, the same birthday. That's the other Lee Allen thing.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That he called
It
it
was his
Christmas
birthday.
saying it was my birthday to Brian
December
Cox's
18th.
house.
Right. Which is sort of like the first totally proprietary piece of information that Graysmith gets.
Yeah.
When he's starting to realize someone needs to write this book.
Yeah.
It might as well be me.
That's the thing that sets him off, is that he almost gets there. Like Belai's maid gives him the information about, I have to kill today. Today is my birthday.
Yeah.
He gets that information. He goes to Zach Grenier and he goes, I just need to check a date. And he's the one that goes, it's fingerprints and handwriting.
Yeah.
Stick to the evidence.
Right.
And then the next thing you know,
what do you actually have?
He's in all those cul-de-sacs. Like he can't prove it.
Right.
Yeah.
He's so close to Arthur Lee Allen right there, but he doesn't go down it because he's like, oh, I can't prove it.
And all these other guys are like, I gave it up. It doesn't fit together. This way lies madness.
There's
and then he comes
always
knocking on that door.
Yeah.
They say, please don't. And then once he gives them the one new piece of info, they're like, I will tell you a thing I've always found interesting.
That was in the Vallejo files. Like you can see in Ruffalo's face just that like frustration of like, God
Ruffalo,
damn
it's like
it.
the flicker of like, no, I can't.
I can't
do this anymore.
And the scene they first meet is after the Dirty Harry premiere.
Yeah.
Right. Ruffalo walking out and then Graysmith finally tracking him down and being like, we're the two characters who have supposed to have been working together.
That's right.
This whole movie.
Yeah.
And Ruffalo's line is, it's over. They're already making movies about it.
Right.
Oh my God.
Which is so good.
It's
and then you
so
have
good.
like the longest time cut, I feel. At that point.
That's when there's the montage that also was cut out of the original movie, where it's just a black screen for 2 minutes while music plays.
Which is great.
It's amazing. It's so good. And it feels like Fincher's like, I'm telling you the time is moving, but it's also like the 60s have died.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's how I feel about that musical montage.
That's very, very
that
spot
he's like,
on.
we're moving out of it. And like, this is a time of innocence dying in America as well. Like, that's
And it
the whole
feels
story
jarring
of
how
the end of the
quickly you're
60s.
moving, even with like the audio clips from news broadcasts, but you're like, that's what happened.
The production design of the Chronicle changes,
Yes.
like
the
all their
typewriters.
typewriters.
Change.
yeah, the
Did you know
typewriters.
this?
It's no, oh
Fincher
God.
changes the kind of typewriter they use because he realized by the 70s, mid 70s, they were using a different kind of Scalectric or whatever.
Yeah.
What about Sevigny?
The scene where she basically calls quits on their marriage
Right.
and you like haven't been checking in on them a ton.
Yeah.
And you're sort of like, this is such a disastrous first date, but she's kind of charmed by his guilelessness.
Yeah.
And he's like a cutie pie. And you
Yeah.
assume like at some point it got better and she like got to engage with him as a real person. And then her scene where she's just like, our first date never ended.
Yeah.
This has just been one long first date of me basically waiting for you to like
Solve the Zodiac crimes.
right, and like engage with me as a human being.
And also
it's never gonna
weekly,
happen.
someone, the Zodiac, calls in the middle of the night and just breathes into the phone. And you're just accepted this because you're so obsessed. Like, that's not going to dissuade you from stopping.
Right. Whereas when he's a single father, he's got his kid in the couch and they're watching the Brian Cox interview.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, change the channel. This is like too upsetting
Well,
for
he
you.
sticks with it for a bit, and then when it gets really gnarly, he's like, okay,
He's
all
got
right,
still
yeah,
a little
that's
bit
good
of a
enough.
minute versus
Kill
now.
those kids. Yeah.
They're
Right,
like at the
right.
dinner table and he's like, Zodiac calling again. Like he's not even really
Doesn't even
processing
care
how
anymore.
much this is interfering with his
He
children's
looks,
psyche.
like you say, trapped in the movie as well. He just
I
looks
just
like he's
got
not
to
sleeping.
see him. I got to look him in his eyes.
And then he does that.
know.
Got
That's
to know that it's him. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so true. Gyllenhaal's performance gets into this space where it's like those eyes,
Yes.
man. Those
Yes.
Donnie Darko eyes.
looks-
My God.
He's really good.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's really good.
it's so like I just think like that the climax of the movie is he looks Arthur Lee Allen in the eyes.
Yeah.
And does he get something out of that? We don't really know.
We
but
don't
it's
really
crucial
know.
for us.
Yeah.
And then Jimmy Simpson's like, this guy.
It's
Right.
this guy.
And then the movie's like, Arthur Lee Allen died before they could really figure anything out. The DNA never matched, and you're trapped in hell forever.
Right.
Goodbye. Roll
Like
the credits.
the end credits are like yes, no, yes, kind of, maybe, goodbye. Like, they're like they keep
but
fucking pulling you in
I
both
have
directions.
to say though, I think you got to hand it to him that when he plays Hurdy-Gurdy Man again,
Yeah.
Yes.
do you know what I mean? He is giving you an emotional catharsis
Yes.
there.
Yes.
And I think, I don't know if I was saying this before when we were actually taping or not, but it's like, if it makes emotional sense,
Yes.
then the logic starts to fall away.
Yes.
Like you can say that this movie doesn't have like a resolution or any of those kinds of things. And it doesn't, but it has one shining moment at the end.
Yeah.
Where Majot identifies Arthur Lee Allen.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
And
most definitive thing.
the most
definitely,
definitive thing that
happens.
can happens. And that music plays and it just says like, the answer could still be out there. You know,
Yeah.
like it's like it could still happen. And then like you said,
Cruz, you know, it's a lot of questions about him.
It also, like, the first time Hurdy-Gurdy Man is played, you're like, oh, that's like a good usage of this
Oh,
song.
clever.
Yeah.
It
That's
sounds
like
creepy
carrying
now.
some
Yeah.
power over to this scene.
yeah.
And then when he uses it the second time, I'm like, you have forever transformed this song.
Right, this
Yeah.
is
I
the
will
Zodiac
never now
song.
not listen to this song and
Oh.
think about like the frustration of being like, we're never gonna fucking catch Arthur Lee
God,
Allen.
we didn't even talk about David Shire's music
David Shire, one of the great composers of all time.
all time.
Did one of my favorite film scores for the Taking Pelham 1, 2, 3. He would do
Fincher
these
wanted
jazz
dun,
scores.
dun,
Dun, dun, dun. He wanted no score.
He was like, only pop music, just set it in
That's
the time.
right. Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
were cutting it, and
What
they
a
were like,
freak.
a couple of these sequences you kind of need mood setting, and they use the conversation score as temp score.
Right.
Oh, they
right.
did,
Another
yeah.
great David Shire score.
And then they went to him, and he wrote 40 minutes of stuff,
Hell yeah.
which is
Because
incredible.
he was probably in his 70s at that point.
Yeah.
He's still alive. David Shire's still with us. 86 years old now.
But the fact that there is so much pop music
Yeah.
used so well and recontextualized in a way that makes it feel so ominous,
Oh yeah.
that when he switches to the score, you're like, this is telling me to pay attention in a different way.
Yeah.
There's some shift here of what's happening in this scene. And sometimes it's emotional and sometimes it's tension. Sometimes it's just underlining information.
Sometimes it's scoring squirrels.
I rewatched that scene's so good. Obviously, the
That seems
trailer.
really- it's just freaky.
Yeah. But I rewound and rewatched the John Carroll Lynch reaction to Gyllenhaal clocking him in the hardware
Yeah.
store.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I swear to God, you go by it frame by frame, and it's like, it actually doesn't look like his face is moving at all.
Yeah.
Somehow his expression changes
He's turned into a
entirely.
statue.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you cannot clock like where muscles are shifting.
Yeah.
And it's just inscrutable. And it's like, for this guy in that moment, on one
a
hand,
man
you're
I
like,
associate with being like a cuddle bear actor from
Yeah.
Fargo
Drew
and
Carey
stuff like
Show,
that.
yeah.
Drew Carey show. Yes, totally.
but you're like, if you're Gray Smith, and that's another moment where he basically cuts to, he's looking straight at you
Straight
through
at
the
you.
lens.
Yeah.
You're like, well, at first you're like, well, that face he's giving me is the resolution I want.
Yeah.
Even if I can't prove it,
Yeah.
he's acknowledging it. And then the longer you look at him, you're like, am I projecting something onto him?
yeah, right. You go
Exactly.
into the cycle 100%. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, actually, is this all coming from me? Blah, 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 blah. Griffin, let's just play the box office game. Come on. Let's just do it. March 2nd, 2007.
Movie's Body by Wild Hogs at the box
what
office.
it
It
is.
just fucking ran the table March 2007.
Remember Wild Hogs?
I do not remember Wild Hogs.
Tim Allen, William H. Macy, Martin Lawrence, John Travolta, the big four.
Yeah.
They're on motorcycles.
Huge hit.
We don't need to get into it.
175
We don't have time for this.
domestic.
$40 million. It was a huge hit.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't even remember this
It
movie.
annihilated Zodiac.
Yeah.
Zodiac was
Just garbage.
humiliated.
And then
just eating its
fucking
garbage.
Leonidas comes in a week later and kicks all of them.
Yeah,
What does?
300.
300.
It comes out a
300,
week
right,
later.
right. We talked
A
about that.
weirdly robust March.
Number
Wild Hogs.
3 at the
Wow.
box office is a movie that would probably never get dumped in February. Now it's a comic book film. One of your favorite actors.
Oh, it's Ghost Rider.
Nicolas Cage's Ghost
Oh,
Rider.
Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
With Pete Fonda.
Yeah, that was dumped and still ended up making a lot of money.
Made a lot of money. Better than Zodiac. Again,
Yeah.
made well over $100 million. Pretty
You
bad.
Think, you think
Pretty bad.
better? Oh, no. Okay. You thought it was
Than
bad.
Zodiac. Yeah.
But fun trash, but objectively bad.
Number 4. It's just funny to think this is what's up against Zodiac. Number 4, kids book adaptation.
Bridget Terabithia.
What?
Anna
My
Sophia
God, how do you
Robb.
guys-
He's a freak.
I'm
I
afraid.
can't believe you guys know this.
Hutcherson.
I'm the rapper Gray Smith of box office.
Number 5.
It's
Another
ruined every
film
relationship in my life.
about obsession, but a bad one.
Number 12 is another.
Number 5.
Oh, is it number 23?
The number
Number
23
23.
with James Carey.
I nailed
James
all of those on
Carey.
first guess. Did I not?
You sure did.
Wow.
My God.
Have you seen the number 23?
I have not.
Not very good.
It's funny to think of that movie existing in theaters at the same
Zodiac
time.
is like, let's think about this true crime. And Jim Carrey is like, I can't stop thinking about that dang number
I'm
23.
gonna write it on my chest.
It's so weird how it keeps popping up.
I'm gonna play the saxophone.
You also
while
have
not sleeping.
Norbit,
Yep.
the movie that cost Eddie Murphy an Oscar this Oscar season.
Yes.
Like, music and lyrics, underrated Hugh Jackman
it's
rom-com,
charming.
very
Oh, yeah.
cute film.
Yeah.
Opening new this week and completely bombing the sort of comedy drama Black Snake Moan
Oh yeah.
with Christina Ricci.
Wait, that opened the same weekend?
It sure did.
That's another blank check movie.
Yeah, and Timberlake and Samuel
Who is that
Jackson.
again?
That's Craig Brewer.
Craig Brewer. It's his
Craig
follow-up
Brewer.
to
All the
Hustle and
Hustle
Flow.
and
Hustle and Flow, right,
Right.
of course.
Paramount buys it and guarantees his next movie.
Right. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And number 9 is Reno 911 Miami.
And his
one
next
of the
movie is
best
I'm going to
titles.
chain a woman to.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, but that was the deal. It was like, we want your movie so badly. Also,
It's like
anything you want.
Sucker
next.
Punch. Yeah.
Yes.
It's just like, so we're going to stick needles in the eyes of young women.
Right.
Whatever the fuck. Jesus
Mhm.
Christ.
Right.
What do you have to say
God,
about
I
Reno
love
911
this
Miami?
industry, you guys.
It's
I
perfect.
love
So
it.
good. Rewarding.
We're doing great
Always
things.
Find success and
Yes.
rewards.
Never been better. I think Reno 911 Miami is underrated. One of the funniest movie titles of all time.
That it's another city.
That's funny.
It is funny.
It's not like an overbearing, annoying joke.
Yeah. It's good.
It's funny.
And number 10, the completely forgotten but perfectly watchable political thriller Breach.
Which
Billy Ray movie. Good movie.
low key
Breach.
fucks all day and all night.
It's his follow-up to Shattered Glass, speaking of Hayden.
Chris Cooper is unbelievable in that movie.
Yeah.
What?
I gave it another spin recently
Literally,
because I hadn't watched it in 15
What's crazy
years.
about that list is that
Yeah.
I don't know any of those
And you were
movies.
like a grown-up at this
I was
time. You were seeing
Black
films.
Snake Moan, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Just
was
because
a
I was
thing.
like, what's happening? But you know what I mean? Like, I did watch it.
Yeah.
You know, I saw it, but I was just out of morbid curiosity.
100%.
But I don't know any of those movies, and yet they all beat.
Zodiac opened to number 4 or whatever.
Four,
No,
yeah.
it opened to number 2. But like,
But, like,
it didn't
Does
do
Black
very
Snake
well.
Moan ultimately outgrow Zodiac?
I think maybe
In total?
not just because Black Snake Moan didn't do well at all.
Sure.
Yeah. But
Zodiac opens to 12.
yeah.
How do you know that? I mean, I know you
noticed.
do this on the show all the time,
Yeah.
but
That's what he
but
fucking
seeing it in
does.
person is pretty cool.
This-
It opened to 13. It made 33 domestic. It made 84 total.
Okay.
Whoa.
Basically
Yeah.
made its budget back worldwide. So it was a loser. But then I think it did quite well, on video as well. And all that.
Leslie, I get some satisfaction out of the fact that I think people who listen to this show sometimes think that I'm like on my devices.
No, yeah, I
During
can
this.
say
Right.
he's not.
And
He's
anytime
like in
anyone's
his Minority
in the room,
Report.
That's-
They
Right.
say what you say, which is it looks weird watching you do.
Well, then I'm like kids movie, and you're like, bitch, a terror with you.
Right. I'm just like
Bridget,
puttering
I think
things.
Nobody made a movie of that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's just like coming out of me.
my God. Wild Hogs. I'm just like, what?
America was for a moment captured by the idea of middle-aged men riding motorcycles
Yes.
into the heartland and having comic
I
things
want to
happen
see
them.
that movie.
Yes, we've told that story on the podcast.
Have you guys
before.
watched the commentary with James Ellroy for this movie?
No.
No.
It's
Whoa.
it's unbelievable.
Wait, is it just Elroy?
It's Ellroy.
It'd be funny if it was just him being like, I love this movie. Here we go.
There's the one that's Gyllenhaal and a bunch of the crew. There's
Yes.
the one that's Fincher solo. I've listened to both of those.
So he's on the one with the crew and
Okay.
Gyllenhaal and Downey, and he introduces himself
Oh,
as
you're right,
like he's like I'm James Ellroy, king of American crime fiction. It's so good. He also says he's hung like a mule.
Does
About
that?
himself?
Yeah, about himself. Yeah,
Wow.
James Elroy, who by the way looks like if Mr. Clean like joined the Nation of Islam, but was white. Like it's not like you see James Elroy and you're like, that guy fucks,
With a bull moose penis.
Like here is James Elroy.
Exactly. Yeah. He's always talking.
Jeez.
He's very obsessed with Ruffalo's hair as well.
Good hair.
He's got great hair. But it is
because you think Elroy's like, God, if only I had that mop on my head.
exactly,
Yeah.
cleaning
I'd
up.
have 6 extra wives on my Wikipedia page.
It's so great to see. It's
Hollywood.
really interesting because of obviously everything he's written, but
Mhm.
also what happened with his mother and hearing his take on the Zodiac and just what a absolute narcissistic loser
Zodiac was.
Zodiac was.
Yeah,
like that. This is just the banality of evil.
Yeah.
That's the thing
And it's
about
kind of
Zodiac. It's like
meaningless.
he's a weird nerd.
Yeah.
He's not even good at this.
No.
He invented the template for so many things in fucking serial killing.
Yeah.
but like by being a weird freak. And who would mostly write it and be like, I saw The Exorcist, hilarious comedy or what, like shit like that.
Yeah.
Like
he's a troll.
He's a troll poster.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he's a fucking troll.
And he killed 5 people or maybe 35. Probably just 5, but who knows, I guess. Leslye, thank you for coming.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you for having me. This was amazing. I feel like we could have talked.
The problem with
15 more
Zodiac
episodes.
is we could talk about
It's an endless while. But we have to cut ourselves off so we don't fall prey into the trap that destroyed these men.
Absolutely. We've also been talking for a very healthy amount of time, which is good.
Exactly 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Great.
Leslye, I said to you, and I've said it on mic many times, but it's what I want out of Star Wars, the promise of your show. Not just that you are the one doing it, but the idea of the newness and unexplored territory
and
in the
as
Star
you guys
Wars
know,
sandbox.
Before the prequels, which I know you guys
have covered.
I was kind of hoping.
Unfortunately know we have covered.
You unfortunately know that we have covered them.
I want you guys to go back and do it again.
You want us to start it over?
Wow. That would really make a lot of people unhappy.
Burn it down.
But it is. We were saying before, it is the ultimate blank check movie.
It is.
The Phantom
The
Menace.
ultimate blank check project, especially those 3 movies.
No check blanker than that.
No. No. Especially the idea of him releasing them and everyone being like, we're horrified by this. And he's like, I'll get to work on the sequel.
I just love him so much.
I'll see you later. I love him
So
too.
George, are you
so
listening
much.
to the fans' complaints? A little bit. Maybe the weirdest amount I could listen.
About. Yeah, right.
I wish we had more time to talk about George Lucas because
come on back sometime.
I would love to come back and do that.
Or we'll think of something else for you to come on and talk about. But thank you for joining us.
But no, thank you for having me. I love this movie so much.
You did amazing.
Okay,
You did a great
good.
You did amazing.
Good.
Jesus. Take us out. I have to pee.
Okay, I need to poop, so it's going to be a race against time. Can I finish this before David finishes peeing? Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media and helping to produce the show. Thank you to Alex Barron and AJ McKeon for our editing, JJ Birch for our research, Lane Montgomery and the Great American Owl for our theme song, Pat Reynolds, Joe Bowen for our artwork. I have to go to the bathroom so badly. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit. I don't want to say shit. It's a little triggering to me at this moment, including our Patreon Blank Check special features where we do commentaries on film series. Right now we're doing the Pierce Brosnan Bond movies. We also just have the fucking Fincher music video episode that just came out. Tune in next week for Curious Case of Benjamin Button with Richard Lawson. And as always, I did it. I did it. I finished it and David's still in there. This is like physically painful. Okay, I'm going to read a thing while David's still in there. My former roommate, Chris Wilmot, who grew up in the Bay Area, sent this to me, and I think this is relevant. He said, I know you all have probably already recorded your Zodiac app, but had to share this ink review I saw while working at an art supply store that's too weirdly specific to not be written by the real Robert Graysmith. I've been drawing in pen and ink since I was a child, and for 15 years was a political cartoonist, and for the last 30 years, a best-selling author of books, illustrating them all with Gillette pen points and Ultra Draw ink. It is permanent, light fast, and if you had to, you could draw on glass with it if you could. It is so much denser and richer than other inks on the market that the day they stop making Ultra Draw ink, which I use with a dip pen and radiograph pens, I will switch to another media. Other inks thin out when you erase your pencil lines. This ink is eternal. Love it. Robert Graysmith, author of Zodiac and other nonfiction books.
Thank you, Robert.
Robert, are you okay?
No.